All
Yep,
right,
we're good.
We are live now. Sorry, guys, for a bit of a delay, but finally, welcome to the Sideline Spice live mock draft 2020. So I'm joined by three of the brighter football minds in Australia. We've got friends of the Spice, Beau Kennett and Caleb Smith.
Hello.
Yo.
And we have Fantasy Football Down Under's very own Lewis Glover.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Really looking forward to talk some draft.
Me too. It's been a long time coming, I feel.
Certainly has. It's and with the lack of sport going on, it feels even more exciting to have the draft. And I think we're going to witness something unique and potentially once in a lifetime to have all of the GMs dialing in from home as well. So I'm excited to see how that can play out.
I can't wait to see which one has a technology fail and fails to submit their pick.
Surely there's a bet. There's a Vegas bet.
$10 on Texans.
No, Bill O'Brien will do it deliberately. It's a power move.
Yeah.
So, apparently there is an honor system in place where no one in the first round is going to jump up and take a pick if someone times out because of technical difficulties. So.
But only the first
until Belichick's on the clock, yeah.
well, lucky for the Texans, jokes on everyone else, they don't have any first round picks to give away.
See, actually, Bill O'Brien is a genius.
Yeah, that's right.
Chess, not checkers, right? So speaking of Fantasy Football Down Under, Lewis, so for those who are not familiar with it, Fantasy Football Down Under probably run the best fantasy football leagues in Australia. They're not just your standard 12-teamers, they're really diverse. And I've heard you've got some really interesting ones this year, Lewis, so tell us a bit more about that.
Thanks for that. We do try to make things a little bit different, a little bit unique. And so there's three different sort of public leagues we've got going for this season. The first one is just a series of best ball drafts, and there's going to be as many of those as the demand wants. We've already filled 3 or 4, and they are just draft only leagues. You pay your entry fee, you draft your team, and then the computer automatically sets your optimal lineup over the course of the season. There's no waivers, there's no lineups, there's no trades, and the team with the most points, or the top 3 scoring teams at the end of the season, split the pot out between them. So that's a really good way to pass the time if you enjoy drafting like I do. It's also a good way to gauge ADP and sort of quote unquote practice for your redraft leagues coming up and get an idea of the way the ADP trends are going, also with a little bit of cash on the line for the end of the year as well. The next thing we're doing is the FF Down Under Bowl. This is the 3rd season we'll have been running that, and this year it's going to be a 240-team league, and that's really it's made up of 20 12-team leagues with the top 4 teams finishing the regular season going into a huge playoff contest, and people from all around the world participate in that. With 50% of the cash proceeds collected go towards a pot. I think it was $700 or $800 to the winner last year, and also then half the pot goes to the Smith family as well. So through everyone's generosity, we were able to donate about $1,500 to the Smith family last year, $1,000 the year before. I'm aiming to crack the $2,000 mark this year. So if you are interested in that, make sure you follow Fantasy Football Down Under on Facebook or Twitter, or send an email to fantasyfootballdownunder@gmail.com. And then finally, a new initiative for this year, which is potentially might not happen because of COVID, unfortunately, but it's called the Fantasy Football Down Under Invitational. That is exclusively for people who are physically located in Australia. And the plan is to have a series of live draft satellite leagues hosted around the country in major cities, being probably Sydney, Melbourne, and also Perth as well, because there is a strong contingent of players out there, with the winners of these satellite leagues going on to compete for the chance to win the overall grand prize, which will be a trip to an NFL game of the winner's choosing in 2021. So if all of that can come together, it will be a pretty exciting first of its kind league that's ever been run in Australia before.
Ooh, I would love to go to another NFL game. So watch out, Melbourneites, or Melburnians rather.
They're going to be good.
Yeah.
The new kid on the block down in Melbourne.
Oh yeah, they ain't going to see what's coming. And that first league appeals to the lazy person in me, because I mean, you guys all know how much effort it is managing. Well, not Caleb because he sucks at it, but everyone else knows how much effort it is managing fantasy lineups. I'm kidding, Caleb. You're coming in hot this year.
That's all right.
I was just testing to see if you're listening.
I'll turn off my camera every time I start crying during this broadcast.
Caleb, we can't do it as a 4-man show, a 3-man show rather. No, but that first one is a really interesting concept because it's just letting your draft do the talking and the computer do the talking, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of fun. Good way to practice drafting, and also, yeah, potentially earn some cash. And if you think you're sharp and you're ahead of the crowd, it's definitely a way to prove that as well.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to at least getting stuck into one of those leagues. Speaking of getting stuck in, so we're about to do first round for the mock draft. The way we're doing it is no trades because most trades would involve other rounds. So sorry, Lewis, you can't be wheeling and dealing in this one.
Devastated.
The way we're doing it is so because there's 4 of us and there's 32 picks in the first round, we're just going 1, 2, 3, 4 and cycling through so that every 4 picks one of us gets a go. I have a beautiful live draft board here. So the way I'm going to set this bad boy up is we're going to draft for all the teams. And we're going to do a manual draft. Excellent. Okay. And yeah, like we'll be explaining why we picked certain people, roasting those who we disagree with, and hopefully we're somewhat accurate with what happens tomorrow. But I mean, between trades and the fact that teams always go rogue, like I don't think anyone can accurately predict this, but it's fun anyway.
Sounds good.
It's a lot of fun anyway. Now, who are we starting with? It looks like we have Lewis Glover on the clock. Who's going to be pick number 1?
Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to be surprised the way this goes. I will say, though, that the Bengals have flat out refused to entertain any offers for the number 1 pick. And I think that's pretty interesting because we've seen teams in the past give up so much to move up and get the guy that they want. The Washington Redskins and the Rams come to mind in the RG3 trade. And the Bengals roster has so many holes in it, and so many positions of need to fill, particularly on the defensive side of the ball and at quarterback. It would be interesting to see without COVID whether they might entertain that and move down and select Tua. But I think that they're, with the uncertainty of the medicals and not being able to look into him, they should draft, and they will draft. And that's who I'm picking in my mock here is Joe Exotic of the Tigers, LSU Tigers, now the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, 101 to LSU, and I think he's going to be a very successful NFL quarterback.
My drafting froze and it actually jumped. It's jumping the gun.
There's a lot of talk actually coming out of the Miami camp that the Miami owner is keen on Joe Burrow, and they've obviously got an abundance of picks, 3 in the first round and 2 next year. So I wouldn't quite say if Cincinnati get given something too good to refuse. Are you going to refuse 5 first round picks?
No, they
still
should
get a quarterback in the 5th pick overall.
Yeah, I think they'd be crazy to not do that. I think if you can get Tua and then 2 of the first round picks this year and a couple of extra and 3 first round picks next year, that'd be crazy to say no to.
Mm-hmm. But yes, Joe Burrow, Ohio kid as well. So
yeah,
good fit.
It's been pretty exciting to see him go there. I mean, he succeeds pretty well under pressure as well. And that's going to be pretty important behind what is let's say average offensive line. They're not great, but they're certainly not horrible. They're just obviously hoping they can keep AJ Green there. Otherwise, if they lose him, that's obviously his best receiver straight up. So, yeah, it's a good pick. I reckon it's almost the greatest luck we've seen in this draft. So, yeah, good way to go.
One spicy thing that I've thought about, but it's never going to happen. I agree. Burrow's as lock can be for number 1. Something spicy would be trading down, like you said, Lewis, and tanking for Trevor next year, which I don't think they'd have the guts to do that. But I think Trevor's a better quarterback prospect than Burrow. And if the owner could survive being bad for one more year, it could be some more short-term pain for some long-term gain.
Yeah, I don't think the fan base is going to be willing to accept another 2-3 win season. Mm-hmm. The Browns did it for a while, but those fans have a mental illness. So
Sorry to NFL Brands fans listeners out there.
I don't know if it's mentioned Lewis. I was full of PTSD.
Oh God!
Well, it's Stockholm syndrome, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah,
they've fallen in love
with Haslam.
They've fallen in love with their abuser that is Jimmy Haslam.
Oh man! But yeah, no, Burrow at number 1 is basically a lock. So number 2 on the clock is Beau.
Yeah, that's me. That's another. It's an easy pick again here. I don't think that Washington are going to go too far out of trying to ruin their own draft again. Just make sure you get the solid guy. Keep building on that defensive line. They're kind of without getting too far ahead of myself. They could try and follow in the footprint of what San Francisco have done and just create a beast of a defensive line and win off that way. And that being said, Chase Young, defensive end, that's just as big a lock, I think, in anyone else's board that will happen.
So you reckon there's no contemplation there for them to look at Tua? Or you reckon they're just happy enough with Haskins to give it at least one more year of a risk?
Yeah, at least one more. You invested a lot. It's a lot of draft capital already. I know that Arizona with Josh Rosen gave him a year and it didn't pan out. Maybe that's a trend that's happening in the NFL, but new coach, see what you've got there and take a better version of Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa. Yeah. Better than Joey, maybe not Nick.
So Chase Young's the highest graded prospect overall in the history of PFF grading, and that's going back to 2014. I think he's far and away the best player in the draft. And yeah, like you said, I think that if Washington don't screw it up, they could build a almost like a San Francisco-like thing. They're just such an immense defensive line that even with average quarterback play, they could be a threat, especially in the weak NFC East.
Yeah, look, I think it's the right move to make, and you add him and you pair him alongside Montez Sweat on the other side of the line, and you've already got Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen on the interior. That's a very formidable defensive line. And Ryan Kerrigan's no slouch either as a rotational piece, and even Matt Ioannidis has been a serviceable rotational piece at times as well. So I think you can do a lot there. And to be honest, I think they like Haskins, and I think that Haskins towards the end of the year started to, come on a little bit. And let's not forget, Joe Burrow couldn't beat out Dwayne Haskins to get the starting job in college. Yeah. And this is the guy that everyone's raving about as the number one overall pick. I just think it's too early to give up on Haskins. And he was in one of the worst situations you could put a rookie quarterback into last year. The Washington Redskins are the dictionary definition of dysfunction. They're slowly starting to turn that around now with, they've got in Rivera. They've I believe they fired their GM Allen as well. And so some pieces are starting to come together. Hopefully they can improve the offensive line because he was under duress constantly, but it's just been an absolute mess. And I think it would be too soon to bail on Haskins. I don't think they need to do that. I don't think we've got a Josh Rosen type 2 situation.
No, I agree.
And that's Ohio State. He owns every record in Ohio State. So
yeah,
that's enough to give him a chance.
Yeah, and look, if he's that bad next year, they'll be high up enough to get a quarterback next year and have Chase Young. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Who do we have at number 3? We have Caleb Smith.
Yours truly. What's up? All right. So the Detroit Lions are on the clock at number 3. I believe, and from all the rumors we've been seeing today, they're looking to at least listen to trade calls. But in this situation, obviously, we're not listening to trade calls, so we'll just push it off as a what if. There's a lot of different options they can go with. It's probably too early for a receiver, even though there's so many receivers on the board. There's a lot of good linemen on the board, and they need help there. But I think if you're in that situation of wanting to pick the best player available right now, and possibly the best player in the draft, is Jeffrey Okudah, the corner from Ohio State. We have him up here. He's a 4th-ranked player on our PFF's table. The cool stat I found out about this guy is that over the last 2 years, he's the only corner in the country to never allow more than 50 yards receiving, which is absolutely incredible when you consider some of the wide receivers he went up against. He absolutely loves playing in press. I think it's like more than 90% of his snaps or something ridiculous is in press coverage. And Detroit loves to play man. Like, they love press, they love man. pair him up with Desmond Trufant and Justin Coleman, and give Detroit that that defensive backfield they really need to shut down a lot of those other teams they face. And I mean, think about the receivers in that group. You got Robinson at Chicago. You still have Thielen at Minnesota, and then you have Adams over at Green Bay. You need an awesome corner to shut them down. And Cooter's going to do exactly that.
Yeah, that's
cool.
And especially losing Darius Slay as well. It's a dangerous division for receivers, and he's probably as safe a bet at cornerback that I've seen in years. Yeah, he's got an argument for best player in the draft as well. He's a monster, so I have no issue with that pick there.
Which a fun fact now is only like 2 years ago, we've got our first 3 picks on this board all were on the same team at Ohio State.
Yeah, good team. Still no championships. Oh wait, no, they got one now. I can't say that anymore.
Is Ohio State good? I didn't know.
Ohio State don't have championships, do they?
But, I keep on thinking that Joe Burrow's not with them anymore.
Yeah, but Burrow got one as soon as he left. All right, so I am on the clock for pick 4. So this one's a tough one because, full disclosure, I think Isaiah Simmons has a chance to be the best player in the draft. He reminds me a lot of Derwin James. I mean, he played everywhere in college. He's a freak in nature. Any team would be better with him. And I mean, New York do have a need at linebacker. Unfortunately, they've got more of a need at tackle. They've got a young new quarterback in Daniel Jones that needs to be kept upright. Nate Solder's all right, but he's 32, 33. And I don't think they've got a right tackle. So, so look, there's a lot of good tackles in the first round this year. But the last few days, when I was watching some film, my favorite is Jedrick Wills. Now, there's an argument for Tristan Wirfs here. You could argue Mekhi Becton. Hell, you could even argue Andrew Thomas here. But the reason I picked Wills was I think he's the most consistent tackle in the country by far. So I watched a Brett Coleman breakdown video. It was breaking down the comparison between him and Wirfs, and his technique in pass protection especially was way better. He's used to playing on the right-hand side. Admittedly, it was to protect Tua because Tua's blind side was his right, being a left-hander. And he's just got the least weaknesses. And when Solder eventually, moves on, he projects to be a monster left tackle. So, Wirfs arguably has a higher ceiling, but if it is, it's marginal. But I think that the floor for Wills is just so much higher that, for me, that's got to be the guy.
Mm-hmm. Plus, he's a horse. He's massive. He is massive.
Can't argue with that pick at all, especially with what New York want to do. Whether it's a good identity in 2020 of running the ball, that's a different argument altogether. But if they're going to give Saquon Barkley 400 touches, they better give him a line to run behind as well. So that's what they want to do. They want to be able to run the football. They want to keep Daniel Jones upright, protect their 2 first-round investments over the last 2 years, and they should do that by addressing the offensive line, which last year it showed improvement. They have Will Hernandez who's coming on nicely. They finally ejected the turnstile that is Eric Flowers, and so they can move on from that situation. And they'll be able to slot Wills in at right tackle straight away to start with his with him long term becoming the starting left tackle, the cornerstone left tackle for the franchise. So I think this is a safe as houses pick, fits with the team needs and the team identity as well. So knock it out of the park.
And quite quickly, the offensive line could become a strength of the team.
Yeah,
I mean, Solder's not a bad player. So they've got some pieces, and they were they were 12th last ranked offensive line last year, so they were ranked 20th. So one stud could vault your ranking up from being bottom third of the league to a top 10 line just overnight, basically.
Yeah, look what Quentin Nelson did.
That
All
was
you need is
exactly what
one
I was
good
about
guy.
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, snake that one from you.
Yeah, you were quick, huh?
But yeah, it's like
I'll
Lewis
take
said, man. They've invested so much at quarterback and then running back with their first their picks, and an offensive tackle hits that 100%. They need to be running the ball effectively because obviously that's such an important part of their offense. And if they want to have Daniel Jones have any chance to develop and show what he can do, he has to be able to stand in the pocket. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant pick by you.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's see if they do the right thing though. You never know with the Giants, right?
I'm fine with Isaiah Simmons going there.
Yeah. All right. So on the clock for pick 5, Lewis.
So this is one of the 3 first-round selections the Miami Dolphins have in the first round of this year's draft. This is their original selection. And
I love how you had to specify that.
well, it's that's what they stunk, which is why they're picking 5th overall. And they did have a campaign throughout 2019 driven by the fans tanking for Tua. Now, given that the medical issues and the red flags that are coming up because of teams not being able to get their hands on Tua and give him their own medicals the way they see fit, they may have well tanked themselves into Tua at 5th overall when they would have had to really be number 1 or 2 to do that without the lack of movement of the prospects. And that's what I'm going to do here. I think there is the argument to be made that if he's healthy, he's the best quarterback in the class. This is a guy that they should be able to build their franchise around for the next 12 to 15 years. And that's why Tua Tagovailoa should be taken by the Dolphins. I think you have to take the risk here. He's at 5th overall. It's not going to end your franchise if it doesn't pan out for him. Teams recover from bad first-round picks all the time. I think it would be terrible if they were to trade up to go and get Burrow and it didn't pan out and they give up all of their assets. But they've committed to this rebuild in a very sensible way. They've accumulated assets. They've cleared cap space. They've grabbed free agents at key positions. And on the defensive side of the ball, particularly a defensive back, they're looking set. They've got some receivers, but they need a quarterback and they need to build their offensive line as well, which they should do throughout this draft. And that starts with getting Tua.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all this noise about Herbert potentially being the guy, and I get that there's the injury risk with Tua. It's the hip, the knee.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot, there's a long laundry list of injuries. But I mean, I think he's the only quarterback to grade over 90 by PFF in three straight years in college. And I've heard the comparison of a left-handed Drew Brees. And look, you don't want to anoint someone before they've even played a snap of football, but that is his ceiling. Like he's as accurate a thrower as there is in college football. He's won on the biggest stage.
He's also incredibly mobile as well, which Drew Brees is not, and which we've seen is such an advantage in the modern NFL. And he can, if it does seem to slow him down and injuries are a problem, he can be a pocket passer. He doesn't need to move around. It's just another tool to his game. And so I there is the rumors of Herbert, Luca, as you mentioned there, but I think you take the risk for a guy who is going to be a great quarterback and chance the injuries versus the risk that a guy is going to absolutely stink. And Justin Herbert, there's a good chance he's going to absolutely stink.
Yeah, he makes me nervous.
And it's an interesting point because you look at how much a few months can really change his landscape. Back before the injury, it was almost like he was a lock for which one? That's right. Back before the hip injury, though, like you said, he was almost guaranteed to be the first overall pick. If you take away that injury, which obviously it's a huge red flag, but if you take that away, it's really hard to find criticisms on this guy. The biggest one you hear is people saying, well, look who he, had throwing the ball to in 2 potential first-round receivers, which would be a great point, but he still produced with that. You know what I mean? He never had a bad game. He produced through it his entire season. And if you want to talk about talent, Hurts, who just went over to Oklahoma and had a killer year there, he didn't put up anything close to the numbers that Tua did when he took over that offense. I know that obviously the offense changed for him, but, I mean, if he's healthy, he's the best day 1 quarterback in this draft.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed as well. Look at us all agreeing so far. With 5 picks
That's
here.
right. I cannot wait to disagree with you, Luca.
I
Oh.
hope
Yeah,
it
you down.
changes
Oh,
soon.
look, I can't wait to tear you boys apart either, but
It's
unfortunately,
almost like
I
we're
can't.
friends
Real
at this
little,
stage.
hand-holding kumbaya session going. I'm going to break out the guitar and play Wonderwall.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's Wonderwall. All right, so who do I have up next? We've got Mr. Kennett.
That's me on the clock now, and I won't go into too many details again here. I think this is another one of these picks where could go a few different ways. Isaiah Simmons is massively mocked in this spot. I think that they take who you actually pronounced as Mekhi Becton. I think it's Mackay Becton is the tackle that I'm going to take here. I think it's more the Chargers will take a tackle. I've got no idea out of the top 4 which one they'll take, but you could almost plug in any tackle at this spot here. I won't go on about it too much. I think Mackay Becton goes help that offensive line. The coach seems to really still have a lot of faith in Tyrod Taylor there. So that's kind of similar as we're talking before. Let's give Tyrod a shot and give him the best opportunity they can to succeed.
So I think that's the common sense pick, is to take a tackle. But I also think this is the spiciest pick so far, because there's been so much noise about Herbert landing here because, as you know, Rivers is now gone for the first time in a million years. You've got Tyrod there, who's, he's a capable game manager, but he's not going to...
He wasn't good enough for Cleveland, so he can't be that good of a game manager.
But Cleveland need more than a game manager. They need Jesus.
Cleveland had a running back coach as their head coach. That's maybe where we need to start.
This is turning into the Cleveland roast session. I bloody love it. As a division rival, it's just,
Keep going.
Keep going.
Well, quickly plug the Cleveland jersey though. The update's nice, isn't it? They've done one thing right.
Throw it back 4 years.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good point. Like those first 4 offensive tackles, they're so hard to separate. I can see them doing a few things here. Like you said, Beau, I can see them going with Isaiah Simmons. Just I know that he and Derwin are similar in the fact that they're positionless, but he's so much bigger than Derwin. And you just think about what you could do defensively if you had a guy like Isaiah Simmons next to Derwin James. But it's just, like, I think Luca put it perfectly. It's the safe pick. It's a smart pick. They need to fix that offensive line. They've had issues there for, it seems like a decade at least. So at some point they have to address it, and I think this is the time to do it.
It seems like a spicy pick. They could go one of maybe 4 directions, and at the end of the day, it's the right choice. They've helped their team. It's easy for them.
As long as they don't get running back, then they'll be fine.
just don't draft DeAndre Swift.
Wait, is he still on the board?
Oh, damn, Swift has gone out of the top 5. Oh, who's got the later Miami pick? No, we won't get ahead of We won't get ahead of ourselves.
Dave Gesselman already drafted Swift.
He's already punched it in. All right.
How do I make the computer work?
He's definitely, now that the Texans aren't in the first round, he's definitely my pick for a draft day malfunction.
Oh, no question.
You just know that he's got his kids trying to teach him how to use that damn thing.
That's right. Has a little, paper clip in the bottom corner, giving him all the little...
Damn it, clip it. Steer me in the right direction.
I wouldn't be surprised if Gettman did have an operating system that still had the Microsoft Assistant. There,
Microsoft 96.
Yeah.
I wonder if he asks Google Home who he should draft. All right. Who do we have on the clock now? Caleb Smith.
Yeah, so with the Carolina Panthers, obviously, as everyone knows, under new regime with, Matt Rule from Baylor as their new head coach. And it's been a tough offseason for them. Obviously, they've lost Cam, which is a huge factor for them over the last 10 years. On top of that, they had the retirement of Luke Kuechly, and he was such a great player for them for so many years, so big for that defense. And they're in a tough spot. They have some older guys on the way out, some young guys they drafted last year who went really well. And yeah, they can go in a lot of different directions here. This is certainly one of the first picks you could see one of the wide receivers going. Even though they have 2 great receivers there right now, they can get a third to let Teddy B really have all the weapons and complete that offense per se. They could go a lineman as well. That's definitely a chance. But I think Real sits down here. He sees the best player on the available left. It also feels a huge need for them, and that's Isaiah Simmons. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, and runs a 4.39. So
Jesus.
athletically, he's just it's unfair.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So this guy's just made in a lab. But I mean, the interesting thing, as we said before, we've seen in the last few years, these linebacking roles that are sort of like half linebacker, half safety. They're becoming more and more important. Obviously, Darius Leonard with the Colts won Defensive Rookie of the Year his year, played fantastic in that role. You see Lance Kendricks doing the same over at Minnesota. And you look at Isaiah Simmons, he played 5 different positions last year, 100 snaps at more than 5 different positions, which is just crazy. But he also ranked 90, 88, and 80.2 from 3 different positions in pass coverage. So he's just absolutely insane. And I think you take him in that Luke Kuechly role, let him play a bit more. He can cover tight ends. He can go out slot corner, whatever you want. He's just the perfect player you want for 2020 NFL defense.
How's this for a take? I think he's the best linebacker prospect since Kuechly.
Yeah, he'd certainly be up there, man. I mean, considering how fast he is, considering when Kuechly came out, we were sort of seeing that progression to where you needed better pass coverage, linebackers. I don't think we've ever seen a linebacker with that's this good in pass coverage. At least not from any of the to go in the first round or anything like that.
No, agreed. I mean, even the outside guys like Von Miller, who were, Von Miller's a pretty athletic dude. Even he ran like a 4.5. So this is like Von Miller on crack. And he's played safety in college. So I mean, his pass coverage skills are clearly elite. It's not just a linebacker being asked to pass cover. This is a guy whose main role in college was pass coverage. But he can also hit with the best of them. So
he's a big guy.
Yeah. I think this Panthers are going to be missing Kuechly this year. I think that not much will make the pain better, but if anything would, getting Kuechly 2.0 would do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Anyone else got any thoughts before I move on to my pick?
Only that I think the Panthers should potentially entertain trading down here. They've got a lot of holes in that roster, and it's going to take more than one player to turn them around. I'm not convinced that Teddy Bridgewater is the long-term answer at quarterback either. It's going to be interesting to really to see how he works with Joe Brady and the offense that he wants to run, because Joe Burrow pushed the ball deep downfield at LSU last year. Teddy Bridgewater is check down Charlie. So they went and got Robbie Anderson, who is a deep threat. Curtis Samuel is a deep threat. DJ Moore can go deep as well, but he's also great with the ball in his hands. It's going to be really, really interesting to see who wins out there and whether Bridgewater can rip it downfield and whether it works out for them. If it doesn't, and he isn't able to do what Brady asks of him, this team has 2018 Giants written all over it. A bad defense, a team that's got a running back that they want to give 350 touches to, which is like what the Giants did with Barkley in his rookie year, and they're going to crawl to a five win season and find themselves in no man's land to get in the 2020 draft. They not only did they lose Luke Kuechly, they lost James Bradbury at cornerback as well. I think they're recruiting cornerbacks from just about anyone with a pulse at the moment in Carolina there, because it's just they've got no one. They've got very few assets particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They do have a good pass rusher in Brian Burns. Shout out to Florida State. So it'd be good to see his progression and having him and Simmons as a cornerstone or key building blocks for that defense could be really interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done for the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, that is a roster with a lot of holes, and it's a division that's probably improved the most in this offseason so far. So, trading down and grabbing a CJ Henderson a few picks later and accumulating picks could be another good move for them for sure. All right, so it appears that I'm on the clock now. So I've got the Cardinals next. So if you'd asked me to do this a month ago, I would have run to the table and been like CeeDee Lamb. It would have made way too much sense. I mean, he's reunited with Kyler Murray. He's absolute beast of a wide receiver, both running routes and especially after the catch. He had a creative offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. But, as we know, Bill O'Brien gave DeAndre Hopkins away for a bag of corn chips. So because of that, look, you can never have too many good receivers. And look, Larry Fitzgerald's not getting any younger, although he is the closest thing we have to an immortal in the sport outside of Tom Brady. So while they could go receiver, I think offensive tackle is a bigger need this year. And not only is it a bigger need, there are just so many good choices. Having said that, the other big need I have for them, aside from offensive tackle, would be defensive tackle too. And now while offensive tackle is loaded and it's got 5 potential first rounders, defensive tackle only has 2 in my opinion. Derek Brown and Javon Kinlaw. Now I'm going to go with Derek Brown, and I think that's the reasoning behind a Derek Brown pick here, over going in a different direction, is that he's probably got close to the highest floor in the draft of any player. He's an absolute monster. He gobbles up blockers. He's got surprising you don't get him for his pass rush, but he's got surprising pass rush for someone that size in the interior. And the Cardinals had a bottom 10 run defense last year. And you've got the Seahawks who like to pound the ball. The Rams did before Gurley died, but they like to get back to that when they're at their best. And obviously you've got the Niners who have the best run offense in the NFC. So it's crucial that you have good run stoppers. And, Derek Brown will frequently command double teams. He's got an all-pro caliber ceiling. Even at worst, he's going to be like a safe pick. Like, he's not going to be bad. Like, I can't see any situation where he's bad. So that's my guy.
I'm shocked. Like, I think when you said that you should have ran to the table and picked a wide receiver first, your initial instincts were correct. I don't know how. Like, don't get me wrong, Derek Brown's a good footballer, and yeah, I get they have a needed defensive tackle, but your quarterback is everything that offense. Like you said, Cliff Kingsbury is super talented in terms of drawing up schemes. I would love to see a situation where they give Kyler Murray and Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, and a CeeDee Lamb who he already has chemistry with. I think. I really think that CeeDee Lamb here it's such a perfect pick for them based on like what could help them out and also like I said, previous chemistry. I just don't see how they can make any other pick than that.
My counter argument is Christian Kirk's still there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with Luca on that. Come on.
So what, are you going to take Christian Kirk over CeeDee Lamb?
No, but think of it this way. The difference between a CeeDee Lamb and a Christian Kirk is smaller than the difference between God knows who they have at interior D-line and Derek Brown.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So, but look, I see what you mean. Like, their offense would probably be the most exciting in the league if they had CD. But they're not.
So Caleb, just don't show in again if you can.
That is brutal. No, I want Caleb to contribute, even if he disagrees with me. I want
my mic.
Is this when the tears start that we were talking about before?
That's right. Oh, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Let me just turn my camera for a second.
Caleb, go sit in the corner and think about what you've done, mate.
Oh, that's brutal. It's everyone roast Caleb Day. No, but you got a point. Yeah, but that's why I picked Brown. Lewis, what do you think?
Look, I can see it go both ways. I would love to see CeeDee Lamb go there because Larry Fitzgerald's got 1 year, probably 1 year left him in at best, and they constantly have 3 wide receivers out on the field. I don't know how you'd be able to defensively scheme to deal with DeAndre Hopkins, CeeDee Lamb, and Christian Kirk at the same time. That would just be remarkable. And then Larry as the wide receiver 4, he'd just be open constantly. It would be an incredible thing to see. It would really benefit Kyler Murray. And, there's an argument to invest in the offensive line as well. He did take quite a few sacks last year, but the majority of them were his fault. Holding onto the ball too long, running around, breaking the pocket and running around and getting taken down, not quite able to outrun defenders like he could at the college level. And I think he will take a big step forward in that. And one of the ways that you help him is get a guy who's incredible with the ball in his hands that you can get the ball out quickly to. And that's CeeDee Lamb. As I think Lucas said at the top, he's probably the best receiver yards after catch in the class. And with the creative mind of Kingsbury, You can stretch the field with Kirk. Andy Isabella as well. People are forgetting about as just to take the top off, and then Hopkins, and to have CD Lamb come in the short areas and eat up the space that's been opened up for him could be crazy to see and quickly make them one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. But having said that interior pass rush is rare. You get a lot of just two down run stuff in nose tackles, and to get a player of Derek Brown's caliber, who Daniel Jeremiah rates as the best interior lineman in recent memory. He has him at the number one rated prospect over the last 3 years, which is quite impressive. And so when you can get a guy like that, it can't be a bad pick when you can add the quality of Derek Brown there.
Absolutely. Didn't Arizona draft like 3 receivers just in last year's draft as well?
Yeah, they put a lot of focus into it.
They did. They obviously they drafted Andy Isabella with the pick that Miami gave him for Josh Rosen, and they got Hakeem Butler, and
Hakeem Butler. That was
That's right.
Iowa, was he? Out of Iowa State.
Yes, Iowa State, and I think he was a fifth round pick, so he dropped in the draft, and I think there was one more as well. So they definitely had some depth there. It's certainly not a position of need, but because they were able to get Hopkins so damn cheaply,
yeah. So they better invest a top 10 in getting another receiver right now, huh? No. The answer is no.
All right, I feel bad for Caleb, so let's move to the next pick. So we have Lewis on the clock.
I'm on the clock, and it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are just a stinking hot mess of a franchise. They're embarrassing. We should relocate them. They don't.
Florida's
Where are we relocating them to?
I mean, isn't Florida where you keep embarrassments?
Wow. Yeah. They are the Florida man of the NFL. That is Jacksonville, and the way that franchise has been run. They've managed to take a team that was in the AFC Championship game and just set fire to it. That they had, in the Dark Knight when the Joker sets fire to the giant pile of money. That's what Jacksonville had. They had assets that were this giant pile of money. They had an embarrassment of riches on the defensive side of the ball, and they just went, fuck it, let's set fire to it.
Hey, we got Calais Campbell out of it I'm a Ravens fan, so I'm not mad about that.
You got him for a sandwich.
It was a club sandwich. It was a good sandwich.
It was a club sandwich with an extra layer and a pickle on the side. But still, the Jaguars are in a shambolic state right now, and there's so many ways to go. They need receivers. They should get help for Gardner Minshew if he is the guy. They're going to be trading away Leonard Fournette for a handshake or an elbow bump rather, and. They've lost Jalen Ramsey and they lost AJ Bouye as well. So I have them. They should draft CJ Anderson here, cornerback from Florida. He barely needs to even pack his bags get to Jacksonville from Gainesville. It's just up the road, and that's a real serious position of need for them, and it can
great pick.
Yep,
and they're build their defense around a solid corner who you can go and compete with a team's opposing number one wide receiver. And this is a kid whose ceiling is still growing. He played running back in high school. He's new to the cornerback position, having only played it through college. So I know it's going to be interesting to see what he can do.
Daniel Jeremiah actually has him pretty close to Jeffrey Okudah. He says the difference between the two is not that big.
Yeah, and just in his latest mock draft, he actually has him going 17th, falling a little bit to Dallas, but but he also says he could end up going top 10, outstanding cover. But the concern is his tackling. But I think with good coaching, you can improve that. And primarily you want your number one corner to be great in coverage, and that's what he is.
The concern was his tackling because he played his final year with a torn labrum.
Yeah, he played the whole year with a torn labrum.
So yeah, no one's going to tackle well with a torn labrum.
And yeah, I think he's he's not. I don't think he'd fall past 15 to the Broncos. I know his draft stock's been climbing and climbing. Look, Okuda is the clear number one, but he's not that far behind. I think it's Okuda followed not too far by Henderson, and then there's daylight until the rest of the cornerbacks in this year's class. Jacksonville needs someone to cover for the dearly departed Jalen Ramsey, who now plies his trade in LA. And like I said, he's a local as well, so it makes sense from that standpoint.
Groovy.
All right.
Alrighty.
So next up on the clock, Beau.
Yes, so it's my shot now with the 10th pick, the 10th overall pick. I am going to go another big hog molly. I'm going Tristan Wirfs, offensive tackle, Iowa. I think Cleveland, as much as how bad they were last year, is still only one or two pieces away from being a very good football team again. Their offensive line took a massive dip from 2018 moving into 2019. I think 2018 they were a top 5 offensive line, and then that we all know how that all went, and whether that's on the quarterback or the offensive line, the coaching, you can point the finger at whoever, but get another big hog molly in there, offensive tackle, help Baker come back to being able to hopefully play a little bit more consistent football again.
Yeah,
talent all over that team. Like they don't have many holes to fill considering their record.
And there's the rumor that they're going to be signing Clowney in free agency as well, pairing him with Myles Garrett, which is
that right? I haven't heard that.
Yeah, they are interested. Seattle want to bring him back as well, so it'd be interesting to see what he does. But love the pick. By the way, is there a more offensive line profile than a guy named Tristan Wirfs that played at Iowa? Like, it's just ultimate offensive line. I love it, and I think it's a really good pick. They already got Conklin in free agency, signed him to a big deal, and so if you can get 2 new tackles who were just absolutely horrific last year for the Browns, Greg Robinson, the cartel extraordinaire, the entire NFL,
El Grego.
Quality Greg Robinson. But the Browns were so confident that no team in the NFL actually wanted him on their roster. They waived him before week 1 to make a roster move. When have you ever heard of an NFL team waiving their starting left tackle to make a roster move and then picked him back up a few days later? I mean, that is just...
That's some
supreme confidence that no one wants this guy, and you are literally scraping the absolute bottom of the barrel.
that is the most big dick energy I've seen from the Browns franchise in my lifetime, to be honest.
It's incredible. So if they can replace those 2 tackle positions, I think it's going to help them. And Kevin Stefanski, he wants to run the ball, he wants play action, and to do that, you need a strong offensive line, and the way Baker plays as well with his deep drops, he does need some time to get into his release. So I really think that this is a strong pick. Any of the top prospects at tackle to bolster the offensive line, as you said, Beau, on a roster that doesn't really have any holes elsewhere. The line is the final piece.
Yeah. It's definitely got to be alignment. It's either going to be Wirfs or it's going to be Andrew Thomas here. Like you alluded to with one of your earlier picks, all these top tackles are pretty neck and neck, and I think it's a matter of preference. So, yeah, I've got no issues with the Wirfs pick for all the reasons that yourself and Lewis mentioned before.
Groovy.
All right. We have Caleb on the clock. Has been very silent since his
That's right. Well, I didn't want to say anything about just in case you're shot down again. But anyway, I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to get my confidence back on this pick. I'll try and speed it up. Otherwise, we're going to take 4 hours to do this draft. So look, we're at pick 11. We're at the Jets, and they're in an interesting situation. They have some talent on their team, but unfortunately, it's held hostage by the fact that Adam Gase is their coach. They're constantly hamstrung by this guy who's just constantly surprised by everything he hears. And they have so many different options about where they can go. But Donald's he's in his 3rd year now. He had a really tough year last year. He made out with way too many New Jersey floozies, getting mono. he needs something to get him back in the groove this year. You know, he needs someone to throwing the ball because
I know where you're going with this.
He was in a tough situation last year when he had Robbie Anderson as his best receiver, and he's gone. Like, think about how unfortunate that dude must be. So he finally gets some help from his front office, and he's going to give him CD Lamb. And as you know, Lucas said before, as Lewis said before, CD Lamb is a freak after the catch. He averages 9.2 yards after every catch. It's insane. It's almost a first down by itself. He has 38 forced missed tackles over the last 2 years. He generates a pass rating of 146 when it's thrown to him. He's absolutely amazing. The only concern you have with him is because he had so many free releases at Oklahoma, what's he going to be like when he is going to get pressed a lot more in the NFL? But, I mean, the thing is, man, with a guy like this, like you saw last year with any of these yard after catch receivers, as long as you get the ball in their hand, he's going to succeed. And I really think that CeeDee Lamb's going to do that, and he's going to do it in New York.
Yeah.
Best receiver out of Oklahoma in quite some time, huh?
Hey now, Mark Andrews is a top 5 tight end, and Hollywood Brown is going to break out this year.
I got him started. Here we go.
Just you watch. But no, I think CeeDee Lamb's even more talented than Hollywood Brown. Yeah, he's a freak in nature. Even though Big 12 defenses aren't anything that impressive. You know, Oklahoma receivers and like pass catchers tend to translate quite well to the pro game. Interesting that you went with him over Judy, though. I know they're pretty neck and neck. I know Lamb's a bit higher on most boards, but I know for quite some time Judy was the highest ranked wide receiver out there.
You know, it's a really good point you bring up, and I know how before we discussed how the top 4 tackles can be split by a razor's edge. I feel between CeeDee Lamb and Judy, not as much Ruggs. I'm not as sold on him, but between Judy and CeeDee Lamb, like it's pick either one. Either one is going to be an incredible talent at the next level. I just personally like CeeDee Lamb because while I know they're similar on a lot of different skills, I just don't think anyone can touch CeeDee Lamb's yard after catch ability. Like he's absolutely phenomenal in that area.
Yeah, and he's got underrated hands as well. I mean, he's made some absolute freak circus catches too.
100%.
Jalen Hurts is not a good thrower of the ball. All right, so now that you've taken CeeDee Lamb off the board, so it looks like I am pick 12.
Speaking of not good throwers of the football, the Baltimore on the
Derek Carr.
Hey, that's
you
MVP.
About check down Charlie.
That's MVP Lamar Jackson you're disrespecting. So now, as Caleb mentioned before, Judy and Lamb are like 1A, 1B. Caleb made the choice for me. So I'm going to quickly put Jerry Jeudy on the draft board, and then I'm going to explain why. So first of all, I'm not the ghost of Al Davis, so I'm not going to pick Henry Ruggs here. Yes, Henry Ruggs runs really fast, but you need to do more than run really fast to be a good football player. I think that Jeudy, and this is hard for me to say because I don't like Alabama, he's the best route runner I've seen at the college level. Like this is going back quite a few years. He runs a complete route tree. He's quicker than people would have thought going in. I mean, he runs a 4.45. And look, despite the fact that Ruggs has the fastest straight line speed, Jeudy actually runs better deep routes than him. So he can even do that. Look, sometimes he has concentration problems with his hands. You'll see him make a circus catch 1 minute and then drop something easy the next. But I mean, yeah, he's just cut from a different cloth to any of the other receivers left on the board. And look, I think Tyrell Williams is their current number 1 wide receiver. Like you think that the Jets have it bad. Like Tyrell Williams is their number 1. I can't even name the Las Vegas number 2 off my head. So
Hunter Renfrow.
Oh, that's right. Hunter Renfrow, 3rd rounder out of Clemson. That's right. Yeah, that's not something you really want, is your number
National
2
champion
wideout.
Clemson.
World champion.
To be fair, probably it'll be Darren Waller's probably the primary guy at the moment, and then but the cupboard is very bare.
The cupboard is very bare. I hope they don't mess it up and they let Derek Carr keep throwing the football because Marcus Mariota is not good at football. But yeah, Judy's a slam dunk here for a team that's desperately in need of a wide receiver.
Yeah, nice.
All right.
One question. Can I have one question, one comment?
Yes.
Do you think there's that much of a difference
Raise your
between
hands.
Jerry Jeudy? Me. Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper, who they just let go.
They
Oh,
remind
Very
me so
similar,
much of
both
each
out of the
other.
same school.
I mean,
They're-
his hands is a pretty big difference, to be honest with you, with Amari drops a lot of Cooper.
Hey man,
Yeah,
you're a bit harsh on Cooper, but yeah.
Wow. The
I don't
slander
know.
that's all I've
Amari
got to say.
I'm
don't
always
think-
going to be harsh on just above average receivers. He's not a great receiver.
First of all, how dare you?
Don't you get Lewis started on
First of
Amari
all,
Cooper.
get fucked.
Yeah.
That's right. That's a whole different. This
Yeah.
draft will go for 10 hours. We
You're
start
going to
talking
get on
about
here and slander my son.
It's Cooper and Godwin
Yeah,
are
right.
Lewis's two illegitimate children. You talk bad about either of them, there will be blood.
Yeah, right.
All right, Lewis Glover is on the clock.
Yeah, so with the San Francisco 49ers here at pick 13, to be honest, I think they should be trading back. And John Lynch has already said that there's been calls and that they're open to trading both of their first round picks. This obviously was a Super Bowl losing team, but it's an incredibly strong roster, and they've managed to keep the nucleus of that team together. They have lost Emmanuel Sanders, who was important for them. I think he's going to be missed, and so they definitely could go receiver here. But I don't think that's what they will do. Certainly, if Jeudy or Lamb was on the board here, I think that would have been a move I would make. But what we do know is Shanahan loves to run the football. They play defense, they run the football, and what he needs, a good, strong offensive lineman. And currently, the line is very, very good. But but at tackle, Joe Staley is going to be 36 when the season starts, and he's been an absolute anchor for them. But realistically, he doesn't have long left, and I'm going to add to a position of strength and the identity of the team, which is tackle, and I'm going to take Georgia lineman Andrew Thomas here for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yes, good pick. Good pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, like you said, when you have those two receivers taken off the board, that definitely could affect the decision. But San Fran they're a Super Bowl team. They got this pick. Obviously through their trade with the Colts, they have the luxury of, when you're a team that's that good, picking the best player available. Pairs with need, and Andrew Thomas is a top 10, possibly a top 5 pick, depending on who you talk to. So the fact they can get there, cover for Staley in the future. Keep adding talent, especially a talented guy like Thomas. I think it's a fantastic pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, it would have been nice if you did trade out of that pick, because now you've just absolutely ruined my next pick. That's who I would have taken.
We can talk trade after the draft, but we can
post-draft trade.
Yeah, we could definitely do a little pick swap between.
Trade for Gronk.
Oh God, Gronk Kittle two tight end offense.
Oh my God, Gronk
actually,
Kittle tight end duo. How incredible would that be?
They'd just be psyching each other up after absolutely ending
Wouldn't
the
they?
line of
it'd be off the
linebackers.
chain. Off the chain. We'll swap 13 and 14. You can send Cameron Bray and a fourth round pick over.
You've given this so
what about
much
OJ Howard?
thought.
That's OJ Howard.
That's so specific
I
already.
can't give OJ Howard away.
The reason why I like tackle, aside from everything that I said before, I like tackle better than wideout here because wideout's so deep. There's going to be some good wideouts at the Niners' next pick at 31, even without a trade down. Whereas
we've survived this long without talking about the wideout depth. I think congratulations to us.
We've gone almost an hour without mentioning wideout depth. That's incredible. But yeah, whereas the tackles, as you've so astutely pointed out, the tackle depth is drying up. So, I mean, it's going to be a need in a year or two when Staley retires. And yeah, he's an arguably top 5 talent on the board down there at 14. You've got to do it. All right. So we are on pick 14, which is Mr. Kennett.
So now this is where live in a draft, we're having absolute technical issues because my tackle's just been taken off the board. So in this instance, potentially you'd look to trade down maybe in real life. So with pick 14 overall, Tampa Bay, the 2020 Tampa Bay bandwagon team, still has a lot to Still a lot to fix on the offensive line. I think at the moment they penciled in Joe Haig, who is Indianapolis's swing tackle from last year,
Oh,
to
you
start
hate
at right
him.
tackle.
Yeah,
I don't mind the guy.
he's not
He's a good
bad.
swing tackle, but for all of you people that think Tom Brady's a god, you probably want to protect the guy. So I'm just going next tackle on the board. I've got Josh Jones, tackle out of Houston. He is another big boy, 6'7", over 300 pounds. And again, I've just got another. This is my fourth tackle I've had to draft in a row now.
Oh,
And
it's been a fun draft for you.
The Beau Kennett
yeah,
offensive line factory.
obviously. Hey, as a quarterback, I got a lot of appreciation for offensive linemen. All right. No, but obviously everyone's quite aware of how hot that offense now is with everything that's happening in that team. Tom Brady, Gronk coming out of retirement. You've got absolute horses, guns on the wideouts out there. So Tom Brady, everyone wants to keep him upright and keep him doing what he does, which I have my opinion on the bloke. But Josh Jones, tackle out of Houston. Keep that man upright before he breaks into dust.
Yeah, I agree with it. Like you said, I think you probably would have looked to trade if this is a real life scenario, because Josh Jones is good. You'd certainly feel if they were forced to take him there, they were probably reaching a little bit. There's a lot of different ways I think they could go with it too. Personally, I like their offensive line. I know that they, like you said, just signed Hay, but they were good last year in terms of pass protection. So they have a need there.
When Joe Haig was their starting right tackle.
Yeah, it's definitely a position they can get stronger at. Lions always you can do that. I thought corner is one they could really look at as well.
Yeah,
you know, they could even consider going with Ruggs. I know obviously it might be overkill when you have so many receiving options there, but it's definitely a possibility. They're going to want to give Brady everything he could possibly have after his horrendous year in New England. So, but I think in circumstances without trades, I think Thomas is a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of overkill, look, I probably would have gone with I would have done a tackle too. But if we're talking overkill, adding Javon Kinlaw to that defensive line. It's you know when they have that Simpsons scene where he's like, stop, he's already dead. That's what it'd be like for opposing running backs and quarterbacks.
Luca, have you heard of the expression "hat on a hat"?
Yeah, okay. Look, fair. Like, I don't think they would do that. But just like how Caleb wanted to have Arizona have every single wide receiver in the NFL on their roster, it'd still be an interesting thought. But I think you've got to go for need when you've got like the Tampa Bay Bucks rosters coming along really nicely this year. They were 7-9 last year with like 1 million turnovers, so they're not they're not as bad as people think. Even before they got Brady,
lost a lot of one-score games.
Lost a lot of close games. They were pretty close to
Their
being a playoff
defense
team.
is pretty decent, man. They're just forced
defense
to play on a short field a lot.
The defense came on leaps and bounds. Their secondary was a liability. They were just absolute money to target in daily fantasy and fantasy lineups, just because anyone could score against them and churn up yardage. But their pass rush is strong, and it's the defense improved as the year went on. That's for sure. But I agree with the pick here. Ideally, you try and trade down, but you get the best lineman left on the board, because when you have an aging quarterback and you don't protect him, he gets hit. You'd hate for him to have a neck fusion and be forced to take steroids to get every inch out of his career.
Don't take shots at Peyton Manning with the two Colts fans on here.
Oh my God.
You would just hate Giselle to have to order some steroids.
I'm switching over to
I'm about to break that social distancing parameter.
If you're going to bring religion into this and bring God into the chat,
may Peyton strike you down.
I had the draft board open, and as soon as Lewis mentioned that, I'm like, I've got to see the facial reaction of the Colts boys. Had to switch that screen over. And that's five tackles gone in the first 15 picks.
14 picks.
14 picks, that's right. We're up to pick 15 now, which is Caleb Smith.
It is. And I am controlling the Denver Broncos, who are in a interesting situation. I could talk for days, and I have with other people, about how John Elway is probably the most overrated GM in the league. he's got to do something to save himself here. He's had a few bad years. Since Peyton retired, what have they really done in Denver? It's been a pretty tough time for them. And they have a lot of ways to go. From what everything's been said, it looks like they're pretty keen on their quarterback, Drew Lock, I believe. Is that his name, Drew Lock?
Yep.
Over there in Denver. So there's a lot of things they can go with. Henry Ruggs is still on the board here. He's definitely someone to consider, as well as the other plethora of receivers. They need a receiver after trading away Emmanuel Sanders. They could look at D-line. It's not a huge need for them, but they have a need there. So Kinlaw, he looks really, really interesting on the board now. But I want to throw it back to a few picks ago. The ninth pick, Luca made the comment that it was Okuda and Henderson, and then pretty much a huge drop fall to the next corner. And I want to disagree with you, sir. There is a corner left on the board. PFF's number 2 ranked corner, actually. His name is Christian Fulton, Christian with a K, like the cereal. And he is absolutely amazing.
I can't even.
Do you want me to give you a stat?
He's all the way down on 38 on TDN's predictive board. I had to scroll to find him.
Okay, let me throw a stat at you, Luca, just to woo you. Okay, because he played in the SEC. Obviously, he's from LSU. Against Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs, and Higgins this season, he allowed 11 targets, 3 catches, 39 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 breakups against those 3 receivers. This guy's a big-time player. He played on one of the best, if not obviously the best team in all of college football, plays in the best conference. He constantly performed. They just lost Chris Harris Jr. They traded for Boye. Get a corner to put on the other side of Boye and get that defensive backfield going again in Denver.
I will say as well, LSU is a factory for defensive backs. They are DBU.
They are definitely DBU.
And to be honest with you, it's just because Henderson and Okuda were so highly rated this year. I think the Fulton just really flown under the radar. Any other season, I think people talk about him as a top 10 pick.
I can't argue with the numbers you mentioned. And I know you can use the same argument for Ruggs, but did he benefit from being on that stacked LSU defense?
It's a good question. I mean,
was the defense the highlight of LSU?
It wasn't the highlight, but it was still stacked.
The 60 touchdowns the quarterback threw maybe played a part in their success.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the reason they won, but I mean their defense is still a force to be reckoned with. But
well, here's another stat to throw this way then. Right. Over the last 2 years, this includes your other 2 corners, the ones you're so high about. The number 1 forced incompletion percentage in all of college football, it belongs to my man Fulton. No one forces more incompletions than when the ball's thrown his way than Fulton does. He performs against everyone he plays.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. And
damn right, it's impressive.
Clearly, you've done your Christian Fulton homework.
That's right. Close the Google pages now.
He's probably just itching. He's like, I'm going to lay some knowledge. He's just sitting there silent.
Wait for this Fulton pick. As soon as he said it, all right, let's go, boy. Put some dance music on.
Yeah, look, you made some pretty compelling arguments, and While wide receiver is a big need, I'm not going to disagree that cornerback's also a big need. So, yeah, I could definitely see that happening. And Caleb, you've won this round.
How do we win one of them?
1-1.
1-1. All right. And now I'm on the clock. All right. So Atlanta Falcons is my pick. And there's 2 guys I'm actually tossing up between. The 2 guys, I'll just say who the 2 guys are now. I've got to scroll up because I had to scroll so far down to get to Fulton.
There we go.
I did. He was 38th on the TDN's predictive board. I've lost sight of my 2 guys, and they're actually next to each other. We've got Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina, who I've mentioned earlier, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of his name, but Kaylavon Chasen. Is that how it is?
Chasen. You pronounced it very Kaylavon Chasen.
Wow. Incredible. I got that right. Out of LSU, one of those elite LSU defensive prospects that I was talking about before. Atlanta are one of those teams that have a lot of needs. Cornerback being one of them, but there's no cornerbacks that I really like here. I'll admit that the Fulton thing you laid some knowledge down on me with Fulton, but after Fulton, I don't think there's anyone that's worthy of a mid-first round pick. So Atlanta are one of those teams with a lot of holes. They have a need at interior defensive line and edge. So this is another one where you could trade down and stack a bunch of picks, but we're not allowed to do that in this draft. And so I am actually going to go with Chason. I'm going to go with the upset. I know Kinlaw has been getting a lot of buzz, but hear me out. So there are rumours that the Falcons are thinking of changing into a 3-4 since Dante Fowler signed there, and Chason's a perfect 3-4 outside linebacker. He missed an entire year due to injury, and he's picked up where he left off. Got 6.5 sacks last year. Is an elite athlete, but he's got so many pass rush moves. Like, this man is like a human Swiss Army knife when it comes to pass rush. He could teach a clinic on pass rush moves. The production doesn't match that yet, but I'm just seeing that ceiling, and I'm just salivating if I'm the Falcons. Now Kinlaw is arguably an even better athlete. He's a freak of nature, but I think Chason has a higher floor in my opinion, because the thing with Kinlaw, there's two things that bother me with Kinlaw, which I don't see as holes with Chason. Kinlaw plays really upright. It doesn't matter as much against college athletes, especially when you're playing for South Carolina, but it is a bigger deal in the pros. And he only seems to really have two pass rush moves. He relies on his pure, athletic freakishness to get by, and he's going to be going in a league where there's other freak athletes. So I'm going to take the guy who's the human Swiss Army knife when it comes to pass rush moves. But yeah, look, they're neck and neck for me for Atlanta.
I think you've gone the higher risk and higher reward.
Yeah, and look, I could be eating my words. Like, Kinlaw could be a first-year pro bowler. Like, I think he's a special talent too. But yeah, gun to my head, that's the direction I'm going.
Yeah, I think calling it high risk, high rewards is a good way to put it. I think another way is just an awful draft pick. I can't disagree with this one anymore. Look, I know, like you said, he certainly has a high ceiling, and he may be what do you say, the Swiss Army knife of pass rush moves. But it's only good if that Swiss Army knife actually works. Like, I'm looking at his number here. He's 41st in this draft class for pass rushing grade by PFF, and 67th in win rate. So don't get me wrong, he might. He's all
athleticism. He's all athleticism.
I would think, and look, maybe with the situation they're in, maybe they're drafting a guy with huge upside. Maybe he can develop into something good. But if I'm giving up a mid-first rounder, and like I said, I see that Kinlaw is on there still now, and he is such a good guy that I feel that his floor is certainly a lot higher. I would have had to go on with Kinlaw here. No hatred towards you, but this is an awful decision.
No hatred, but this is an awful decision. And my God,
you should take this personally.
No hatred, but you're a piece of garbage.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm leaving this mock now. No hatred, but
I'm just gonna leave because Caleb doesn't like what I want.
You woke the beast up, man. At number 8, I'm ready to go now. I'm in argument mode.
we started this argument mode up. I just think Kinlaw just overwhelms lesser athletes. So that's where I think the risk is there. Not that I don't think he's a great prospect. I know he could go as high as 13 to San Francisco and maybe even edge into the top 10, but that's my argument. Lewis, want to weigh in before I move on?
Just that, he does have a ton of upside. He's a redshirt sophomore, hasn't played a ton of games, and he'll be 21 years old by the time the season starts. So he is still very young, and you can build on that foundation that he has and help him finish his pass rush and turn some of that potential into productivity. I certainly don't hate the pick as much as some others here. And
Caleb, you have
Beau.
Yeah. Beau.
Wow.
No,
sorry, boys.
I think it's an upside pick, and he's not going to be asked to be the primary pass rusher.
No, with Fowler there, it takes a lot of pressure off you.
Yeah, exactly, and they do have strong interior as well. So it'll be interesting to see if he does fall there. All the rumors are that the Falcons are going to trade up into the top 10 to get something done, whether it's for a cornerback or whether they go up to try and get Derek Brown. There's a few rumors going on.
Derek Brown would be such a good fit there.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see, but yeah, I don't mind the pick at all. And in fact, if he had hadn't have come off the board, he spoiler alert, I'm selecting for the Cowboys up next. That would have been the pick I would have made if Chason was still on the board, and he's probably the most mocked player as well in industry mocks to the Cowboys, who do have a need for their pass rush.
It is, and that's as good a transition as we can do. So you're on the clock, Lewis. Chason's off the board. Sorry to Chase block you.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, bringing out the big guns now. Watch out, boys. All right, Lewis. So with Chason off the board, what are you thinking?
So the Cowboys have got a pretty complete roster, in my opinion. They have the quarterback. They have an offensive line. They have great receiver. They've got a tight end in Jarwin that they like. They've got a stud pass rusher in Tank Lawrence. They've got cornerbacks who, they let Byron Jones walk, which I think was a terrible, terrible decision by the franchise. But they do have, they've got Ayuzie. I can never say his name correctly. Awuzie. And so they've got some talent at corner, but I want to add to that. I want to bring in another cornerback here. I'm going to bring in the Alabama cornerback Trayvon Diggs to the Cowboys here to help fill the void left by Byron Jones. I think this is a complete roster, and I think it's been held back by coaching and play calling, and hopefully Mike McCarthy can turn that around.
This is the second player I've had to scroll ages for. I had to scroll all the way down to 59.
Second time Luca's been burned. Lucas, there's no cornerbacks in this
scroll down.
So you keep scrolling. What I will say is that he is projected to the Seahawks at 27 in Daniel Jeremiah's most recent mock draft but he does have them taking a cornerback in CJ Henderson who has fallen in his mock. With Henderson off the board, I'm going to go to Trayvon Diggs. There's AJ Terrell there as well, but I'm going to go with Diggs here. But I either or, but Diggs is the guy I'm going to go with.
I like it.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's big. He's 6'2". He's 207 pounds. He's a physical corner. And like you said, Dallas, they're such an interesting team. They have so much talent on that roster already. It'd be fascinating to see how Mark McCarthy goes there with everything that's going on with their quarterback contract situation. With everything that's up on the board, I absolutely love this pick. And it works out well for you because obviously I hated the chase on pick. So, it works out that burn.
And we all know Caleb Smith is the one true authority when it comes to drafts.
Just call me the Oracle, baby. What's up?
Did you predict your bad fantasy season last year then, or?
Hey, that's neither here nor there. I knew about COVID. I was scared in preparation. Global warming was getting at a whole different level last year.
Mate.
You had just been traveling all around too. You were the one that brought COVID into the country.
That's right. I got one of the hepatitises. I was trying for all three. It was a nightmare.
Hey, 1 from 3 is not a bad run, mate.
He'd take 1 from 3 in his fantasy games.
Oh, here we go.
He would. He did not have a 33% win rate last year.
There is no pot of tea that can cure this pain.
Maybe one that would knock you out and put you to sleep. I didn't have Diggs on my radar, but it's not a bad pick. Dallas.
He is relatively new to playing cornerback full time as well. Played receiver in high school, played 2 ways initially for Alabama, and he is, he can be used in the return game, so he adds some special teams value to the Cowboys as well. So I think this is a pretty solid selection for them, if I do say so myself.
Well, the thing is, you mentioned earlier there is one of the most complete rosters in football, and that's when I'm more happy to draft for need. So even if Diggs is a bit of a reach compared to a lot of big boards, when you've got so few holes, it's go get your guy. And because of that, do you think that in reality Dallas would trade down if Chason got taken?
I think they'd have to consider it. I don't to hand know the history of Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones trading back. If anyone does know, feel free to chime in there. But generally, GMs have a pattern. Gettleman has never traded back in his career. Some GMs constantly do it. The Seahawks are a lock this year to trade their first round pick and move back and accumulate assets. So it my prediction would be based on that. But genuinely, I don't know what the Cowboys' history has been.
I don't think they move around a lot. I remember when they traded up for
Travis Frederick,
Morris
wasn't it?
Claiborne.
Mhm.
No, Morris Claiborne they moved up for.
But I'm
No,
pretty sure-
not Travis Frederick. He was like projected as a third rounder, and
And
the whole
they
of
reached
Dallas
for
went
him.
who
They reached
when
for
they
him.
Yeah,
drafted him.
that's right.
They reached
It
for him. They
turned out
flipped
to-
out, and he was the best pick of that draft.
Yeah,
That was turned out to be a good one.
nice.
They did trade up to get Des Bryant before the Ravens. I know that because I remember the pain of that day. So they traded
Of
up to
course
get
you
one
do.
spot ahead of us, so they could take Des Bryant. And I mean, he's
There's
out of
there's that rumor that came out that they tried to trade up to get Paxton Lynch a few years ago as well until the Jets pulled the plug. Have you heard
And
that?
Johnny
It's a
Manziel
wild
too.
story.
Dallas wanted Johnny Manziel really
Yeah.
badly. Jerry Jones wanted. So Jerry Jones was trying to trade up, and his son had to be like, "Shut up! We're not doing
Shut
that."
up, old man. I run the ship now.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got next? So we have pick 18, which is Beau,
Shipping
which is
me.
the Dolphins. Beau, I can just skip this. You're going to go John Dre Swift, of course, aren't you?
Funny. I am not.
Because you don't actually run the
so
Dolphins.
I'm the 18th overall pick here, the Dolphins' second pick out of 3 for the draft, and I think my personal opinion of some of the things that are happening in football at the moment is that your right tackle and your left tackle aren't that different these days. I think the fullback is coming into football. That's a hot take from me. And thirdly, I think you have to have a middle linebacker that can fly and that can cover or both sides of the field. So Miami, with this pick, I'm taking Patrick Queen, linebacker out of LSU. He can absolutely fly. He's got wheels. I think he ran in the 4.4s, maybe 4.5s. And just gives that defense a bit of a better dimension. Can play in that division now that is really open, up for grabs for the first time in 20 years. So hopefully a linebacker that can cover there, and that fills a massive need, I think, for Miami. So they, in this mock anyway, they get the quarterback of their future, and hopefully a linebacker that can go run havoc.
I love Patrick Queen. I know a lot about him because he's frequently mocked to the Ravens. I also see him frequently mocked to the Saints, who I'm in control of, and I would have taken him at the Saints had he been on the board. I think he can play anywhere at linebacker. He can play interior and outside, can't he?
Yeah.
So I think outside of Simmons, he's probably the next best. Because I think
he's the number 2 linebacker. Can you even call Simmons a linebacker? I don't know. No one knows, but he's the number 1 or number 2 linebacker in the class.
Simmons goes rover like Jackie Moon. He just does what he wants and then just makes plays. But yeah, outside of Simmons, I think Queen's the best linebacker there. He's got sideline speed. He was a late bloomer. He only really started getting meaningful snaps as a starter in their championship run, but he balled out. He
sat behind Devin White all last year too. So
because that's my only knock on him is, he's obviously a great player, but why did it take until 3 games into this season for him to earn a starting job? That's the only real question I have about him. But yeah, I think he's a great pickup. I think obviously, like I said, it fills another need for him. But yeah, that's my only concern about Patrick Queen is why it took so long, for him to get a spot in that defense.
My answer to that is Devin White.
I mean, why did it take Joe Burrow so long to become a breakout star? It can happen sometimes.
That's true.
But yeah, I think he's a great pick there. I haven't seen him go before the 20s that often, but I mean, wouldn't surprise me if he went there.
And I finally got to draft someone that's not an offensive tackle.
Hey,
celebrate.
The quarterback draft to defensive player.
Chubby chaser Beau Kennett over here. Finally, it's a break.
Beau Big Boy Kennett.
Loves them thick.
Is it thick with a double C or thick with a CK?
Double C. There's
double
no
C
K's in that.
Yeah. All right. So who do we have next? We've got Caleb next on the board.
Yeah, and
we've got Caleb Von Chasen.
Caleb the Oracle.
We got Herb Smith over here.
So Look, I'm pretty disappointed that Botus took Patrick Queen. He would have been a very easy pick for me here at linebacker. I with the Raiders, by the way, just so I should mention that.
Where are the Raiders from, sorry?
The Raiders are now in Las Vegas.
He was trying to trip him up.
Yeah, he was ready for it. He's like, I'm going to own this guy. And look, Raiders already, like as we all know, they have 2 picks in this draft. We used the first one by Luca, got Jerry Jeudy, so that's a wide receiver taken care of. It's a tough thing. They can go with a lot of different options here. They have so many different needs, but they're probably going to go with best player available. There's a lot of ways they can go. They could get another receiver if they really wanted to get both Alabama kids. I don't think they do that. What I think they're going to do is they're going to go with
DeAndre Swift.
I'm leading up to a running back.
They're two running back offense. No one will ever see it coming.
No, I'm gonna go with Grant Delpit, and I'm gonna put together one of the most interesting safety combinations in the league.
Oh, he left Kinlaw on the board.
It is interesting. One can hit really hard and one can't tackle. That is very interesting.
So let me talk about this Delpit guy. So as Beau just said, he's all for tackling, but I'll get on that in a second, because what he's really good at is coverage. He's absolutely incredible in coverage, and he's proven that this year. He proved it last year as well. I think he had an 89 coverage grade or something in 2018. He's perfect at lining up over receivers, and when you have a guy like Abram, who's such a heavy hitter, this lets Abram play underneath and play Delpit behind him. Now, the issue with him is his missed tackles. He has 36 missed tackles over the last 2 years. That's the 4th most among all college football safeties. So it's a pretty incredible number. But hey, look, as long as he's not forced to tackle anyone, he's a really good football player.
I'm so much excited about
play contact sport.
So
that's all good.
You spent 10 minutes ripping into me for leaving Kinlaw on the board when I took his better teammate, and then at a team that has.
But Caleb has brought up a good. Caleb's point was pretty good though. If you don't have to tackle, that's all good. Just like if Blake Borders, if you didn't have to throw in, if that's Blake Borders would have.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Jameis Winston was the best quarterback in the NFL last year because intercepted.
Nah, that's fair, Caleb. Terrible decision.
So,
and the guy wears the 7 though. He wears the 7 for LSU and then plays like that. That's disrespect.
You give me that rant about Kinlaw and how it's so dumb. It's probably one of their bigger needs. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to take a guy who can't do the most fundamental skill of that entire sport instead.
Hey, he can intercept the ball really good, man.
I get that. Look, if he can... And it's a big if he can fix his tackling issues, he has really high ceiling as a safety, but it's such a low floor pick. And you're preaching Kinlaw's floor before, and then you're taking a guy with a much lower floor and maybe even a lower ceiling. I don't get it.
That's right. Good picks are always hard to get.
Are they? I think most people can really easily identify a good pick. Also, fun fact. We have taken 4 LSU defensive players in the last 5 picks.
Jeez, look at that.
All SEC.
Yeah. So, I wasn't kidding when I said they've got a stacked defense last year, even if their offense took the show.
Well, we just took a 3rd round safety in the 1st round too. So.
Did you my brows after that one?
All right, one last thing before I move on, Caleb.
Sure, pile on. Go ahead.
No, this isn't piling on. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that safety is the best pick there. It's not, but let's just say that it was. Why Delpit over McKinney?
Yeah, look, it's a really, really good question. McKinney's just a bit too similar to Abrams for me, and personally, the main reason why I thought Delpit suited going to Raiders was because he could be paired with a safety that was so physical. If there was another team, let's say the Colts, who are possibly looking at a safety, I wouldn't even think about Delpit because he doesn't have that complementary piece. It just seems, look, they have needs of D-line, they have needs of linebacker, they have needs all over the defense. They can get a player who it seems to be the perfect complementary piece to what is obviously a very important piece of their defense moving forward in Abrams.
Yeah. I like that justification. You've just done a little bit of credit.
Fair justification.
Oh, look, you salvaged the pick a little bit with that with that argument. Yeah, I can see that.
Caleb, you can have your dessert.
Joke's on you. I already had 4 cookies tonight.
Maybe you might want to check that blood sugar. All right, so I am on the clock, and I'm not. I mean, I've just spent like 10 minutes talking about the dude.
I think we already know.
Yep, I will say one thing. Beau was saying to me before, he goes, the Jaguars always get someone that they don't deserve every bloody year. And it's just happened in our
I
mock
sounded
draft.
exactly like that too.
That's exactly.
Absolutely
don't
dead on impression.
Don't let the
have
deep
to-
voice. Don't let the deep voice in this video fool you. That's how Beau speaks normally when he's not doing his radio presenter voice.
I'm trying to wear my big boy pants right now.
You're doing a very good job, Beau.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, for all the reasons we've harped on about in the last 10 minutes, Javon Kinlaw's my pick there. It's a need now that Calais Campbell's gone. He's a borderline top 10 talent. Despite the shortcomings I mentioned before, that explosive first step, elite speed and power combination, you can't leave that on the board beyond 20. Like, I don't think he's going to fall this far in real life, but yeah, I'll stop the slide.
Nice, yeah. There's no
Good pick. There's no
comments
arguments
from me.
here.
Not at all.
That's solid. I'm 100% behind that one. Best player available, hits the need. Even the Jaguars can't screw this one up. They'll try, but
they will.
I think it'd be very hard for them to do
They'll
it.
give it a red hot go, but yeah.
They're also a candidate for the DeAndre Swift sweepstakes.
That's right.
The London Jaguars.
Ah, God. All right, we can move on really quickly. And I think I'm looking at the board now for pick 21 for Lewis. And there's a guy that is screaming out there. If you don't take him, Lewis, you're going to get a worse roasting than Caleb ever got.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty obvious situation of what the Eagles need to do here. Again, such a complete roster all over except for one position. I personally, I'm not enamored with the player, but this is 100% the way they will go if this is the situation they find themselves in, and they're going to draft Henry Ruggs III from Alabama.
Not Swift. Interesting.
Well, hey, this is Philadelphia, sir, not Jacksonville.
Yeah, they did a rotation of 4 running backs.
Hey, Fournette could be out of the way in Jacksonville, so that could happen. But yeah, no, Ruggs is just such a slam dunk here.
How happy would you be as a Philadelphia fan if you had Henry Ruggs 40 at 21?
Oh, mate.
Cartwheels.
See you later, Deshaun Jackson, straight into another 10 years of Deshaun Jackson.
Oh, God, yeah, Deshaun Jackson 2.0.
No, well, first of all, I think it would benefit him to learn from Deshaun Jackson, but also play with another receiver with speed, because I think the comparisons to Deshaun Jackson as 2.0 are a little bit overblown, just because Deshaun Jackson is arguably the best deep threat receiver in modern NFL history. I don't think Ruggs is going to be that, but I think if you can put him out there especially with Deshaun Jackson and given how heavily they involve Ertz in the passing game, and Alshon Jeffrey isn't exactly sprightly anymore, so it just gives him a bit of an extra dynamic to the offense, and I think that's a pick that will really help Carson Wentz as well.
Nice.
Yeah, 100% behind it.
Yeah, that's a just a fit, isn't it? He's made for that offense.
Just fits well. So I don't think anything else needs to be said about that pick.
Yeah, no, look at us.
Look at us go. We're agreeing.
We're agreeing again. We're being friends again.
We're back to mateship. All right.
Oh, wait, Beau's back on the clock. Let's have another argument.
Beau,
yeah, all right.
He's on the clock.
DeAndre Swift is still here. The minute
I feel so bad for the guy. He's done nothing wrong to deserve this.
He's going to be watching this video, and I mean, if you are, I'm personally a huge fan of you guys, but these
obviously the Minnesota Vikings, when you think them, you think need at running back. So DeAndre Swift is no. I am not taking DeAndre Swift here at 22 to Minnesota. I'm going to take the receiver who maybe helped himself the most in the whole combine, I would assume. I don't know what your guys' opinion is, but I'm taking Justin Jefferson, another guy out of LSU here. Interested to see what you guys think, if you agree that maybe the receiver that helped himself the most out of everyone in the combine.
He'd certainly be one of them. He had a great combine,
Yeah, he flew. He flew a great contested catch kind of guy too. I think he's in the top maybe 5 in the country, maybe even better in contested catch. To an offense that just lost Stephon Diggs. So Do you lose maybe your best receiver and manage to upgrade in the same season? Potentially.
I
Justin
think so.
Jefferson, I think that's nice.
Justin Jefferson has a chance to be the best receiver in the class. I know Lamb, Judy, and Ruggs are seen as a big three, but I see it as a big four now. Jefferson had the on-field production that was elite. He's a bloody nightmare out of the slot, and like you said, like his draft stock, like when you've got the tape and then the combine numbers to match, that's usually the best sign of like a late riser in the draft. And the Vikings, after having lost Diggs, I think that Jefferson, he feels a need, he'll slot straight into the slot right away. Yeah, I think that's an awesome pick.
Yeah,
he had more plays than any other receiver in 2019 of 15 yards or more.
Jeez.
So, absolute explosive weapon.
He's a super talented receiver. Like you said, he's actually the best receiver in this class in terms of contested catches. I think it's 92.
He is number one. Okay.
Yeah, 92%.
He's ahead of T. Higgins.
Yeah, he's ahead of a lot of people actually. And Diggs, he's ahead of all of them. That's why he's number one. And look, Diggs, in his time in Minnesota, he was the number one, or had the best contested catch percentage as well. So it feels a huge need losing him. My only question, or sorry, not my only question, my largest question on Jefferson is he too one-dimensional in terms of where he can line up in an offense? When he played at LSU, he played 90-something% of his snaps.
96, I think.
96% of the snaps. And don't get me wrong, I know have Chase as one end, but they could have easily put him as the other one. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the ability, but it's just for a player to play 96% of his snaps in the slot, my only concern is if he can play anywhere else, in the offense.
I think he can. Like the types of routes that he runs.
Fair question.
It's a reasonable question.
You can move Adam Thielen around the whole offense. Though.
Yeah, it's going to do a lot for Thielen. That's the thing. It'll be fantastic for him.
Yeah. And for the Indianapolis Colts fans on the chat here, this might give you a little bit of an erection.
Oh, here we go.
I'm always
give it to me. Let's go.
Player Profiler has his best comparable player, which is based on physical attributes, height, weight, workout metrics, and college production profile. His best comparison is Reggie Wayne.
Jesus Christ!
I don't see it at all. I can't see. Reggie was.
I can't see that. Reggie, he was a possession.
You guys can't see anyone as Reggie Wayne though. You guys got him at the top.
Reggie
I would
Wayne
say Jerry Judy's more Reggie Wayne.
But this is off his physical skills, measurables, production profile, all of those things. It's not
who wrote that article?
It's playerprofiler.com. It's every player has a comp based on.
Playerprofiler.com. You guys are fools. All right. So
you need to hire Caleb and I to come in and
I want to see this for myself. No, I believe you. He's still a good pick though, whether we agree or disagree on that comp. All right, who do I have on the clock? Yes,
it's
Caleb
me.
Smith.
Caleb with the Patriots at number 23, and Cheese aren't we in an interesting position? Hasn't been the greatest offseason for us, and losing Tom Brady got significantly worse this
God,
week.
it sounds filthy for you to say us. Don't say us.
Call them us.
I'm speaking on behalf. As right now, I'm taking on Bill Belichick. I'm an actor. I've gone to Bill Belichick's zone. I'm not smiling. I'm now Bill Belichick. Yeah. Okay, Bill Belichick is now speaking to you guys. No smiles.
Right. Nice hoodie, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. I'll pull up. No, I'm just going to go into it. All right. Stop distracting me. I'm Bill Belichick. Anyway, there's a lot of different options they can go in here. Unfortunately for them, as we all know, they had a deal with Gronk this week. There's a lot of ways you can be disappointed about that. The other way is Bill Belichick, myself. I managed to flip a professional wrestler for a 4th round draft pick. So it's not all downside in New England. But the thing, and look, we haven't discussed this at all, really. Justin Herbert is still on the board. He slid down a very far way. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Justin Herbert. This doesn't surprise me. But there's a lot of people there who don't know as much about football as me. So you might be surprised.
Jesus Christ.
He's definitely someone to consider here. I'm not going to pick him here with New England, though. I don't think he has the leadership skills that Bill wants in a quarterback. I think he'd rather go with a guy like Hurts, to be honest with you. But it's obviously way too early to go with the Hurts, just as an example. I'm looking at all the guys left available. I'm thinking about what we need. I'm thinking about picking the best player available. And I'm also thinking about that Patriot player, right? The one that fits them. I don't think there's a more Patriot player in this class other than maybe Tua than Epinesa from Iowa. He is an absolutely crazy good defensive end, and I'm taking him here at 23. There's a couple of things to talk about him. He is absolutely huge at 6'5", 270 pounds. Not that quick. Ran a 5-second 40. But look, over his last 2 seasons, he has 22 sacks and 8 forced fumbles. He's not the flashiest defensive ends. An edge. I see him as more like a defensive end in a 3-4, or as more of a big burly defensive end in a 4-3, like a JJ Watt type. But I think he's a fantastic player, and you send him to the Patriots, they get a very good player for the next 10 years, finally replacing Seymour, who they lost so many years ago.
Great pick. I love that pick.
I don't.
Yeah,
love that pick.
I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of it.
Luke is not a fan.
I don't rate Herbert that highly either. Like his college production, it's all projection. He hasn't actually shown much. Do you like? But even if we're passing on Herbert and Love, who, by the way, I like Love better than I like Herbert.
I agree.
Even if we pass on both of them, you really think the Patriots are going to pass on a wide receiver?
Look, it's a really good point, and
I think just took a receiver in the first round last year. Don't give up on him.
He's probably lose to you in a 40-yard dash, bro. He's
look. I think it's a really good point. And there's so many different receivers that are still available now. There's probably 2 or 3 other receivers that would have been the first overall receiver in their class. This one just comes down to, that cultural fit. And it's such a hard thing to try and, I guess put on a player because obviously we're not part of the culture and all this sort of stuff. But, Epinesa he's such a nightmarish player, and he's such a humble dude. He's from a tough school in Iowa. Patriots and Bill Belichick have links to Iowa's head coach.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of reasons linking, this guy to play for him. And, yeah, they could definitely go with receiver. I just think this is, to be honest, I think this is one of the safer picks they can make.
I mean, and look, combine numbers aren't everything. Like Terrell Suggs is one of those guys that stands out who slid because of his bad combine, and we all know how that turned out. And Epinesa has the college production numbers, so I'm not so concerned about his combine. I think that, I think that he is worthy of a late first round pick. I just don't know if that's a direction that that New England are going to take. And I know for a fact from the Patriots fans that are my friends, I mean, maybe not you, Lewis, but the other Patriots fans that are my friends, they're clamoring for either a quarterback or a wide receiver. So
when has a Patriot fan ever known what the Patriots are going to do on draft day, though?
Bingo.
The only pick of theirs I was able to predict over the years was the Donta Hightower pick. Everything else, it's just
Mate, we keep joking about it, but the team that's probably most likely to get Swift is the Patriots right here. They're probably going to get Swift.
Yes. Imagine if the Patriots took Swift. Or any running back.
To go with Sony Michel. Great.
Yeah.
You must be thrilled with him.
Okay.
All right. So I'm on the clock now. And I have a tough choice because when I saw that I had the Saints originally, I thought, I'm going to get myself a Patrick Queen. So Beau likes to be a home wrecker, and he dashed my Patrick Queen plans. So
you stole the LSU guy from the Saints as well. That's just cruel.
That is heartbreaking. So Saints are one of those rosters that are almost complete. So they've got very, very, very few holes. They've got.
I'd say the most complete.
Yeah, I'd say the most complete. That's probably a good argument to make.
Definitely in the NFC.
Yeah, easily. The one hole they've got is linebacker.
They should play Taysom Hill there. It'd be fine.
Well, not Davis. I mean, Davis arguably the best linebacker in the league at the moment. But I mean, they did lose AJ Klein to free agency. So there are 2 guys I'm eyeing off here. I'm eyeing off Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma, and I'm also eyeing off Zach Bourne from Wisconsin. They're both actually grade pretty similarly to me.
To you? Wow.
In my opinion.
They're
Yes, I
great
know.
similarly to you. Luca
so-
could be a first-round linebacker.
No, you know what I mean. In my opinion.
Look at Zach. I thought he looked like Zach Thomas.
Yeah,
didn't he?
To be
my
fair,
God.
we've seen Luca's Instagram videos of him in the gym getting after it on the squat rack. So
If I could play linebacker as well as I could squat, I'd be a much better football player than I am.
You'd be a terrible linebacker.
Got a nice pair of Holden Utes on your backside there, mate.
Bo, I am a terrible linebacker. Anyway, the reason, so even though I'm an Oklahoma fan, I have to give the edge to Bourne because, I mean, look, they're both explosive with a high motor, and Murray loves to play downhill. But the big thing is, or two big things. Number one is Bourne's a much better decision maker. One thing that I noticed as an Oklahoma fan is that Murray would sometimes he runs so aggressively and so hard downhill that his body moves faster than his mind, and he just misdiagnosed plays, overrun plays more often than you'd like from a first-round pick. The other thing is the pass rush. Like Bourne would probably be asked to play strong side linebacker in New Orleans, but he can be moved around all over the defense. And I think he had 12.5 sacks for Wisconsin this year, which is, some pretty hefty production as a senior, and 19.5 tackles for loss. So, you've got him moving around, you've got Marcus Davenport, and you've got Cameron Jordan. That pass rush is going to give people nightmares. So for me, just adding to that strength and having someone who can also drop into coverage if needed, I think Bourne's a better fit there than Kenneth Murray.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I think it hits on a need. I'm not a huge fan of Bourne in the first round. I like him as a player. I think it'd be a bit of a reach here. I'd be interested in knowing, I mean, obviously they have one of, if not the best receiver in the league, but we're seeing the other receivers they have available here, knowing they're trying to squeeze out as much as, Drew Brees has left in his lemon career. Could you see them like targeting one of these star receivers at this point as well?
Yeah, I could. I don't think T. Higgins would be a fit here because Michael Thomas is already a big body possession receiver. I think if it wasn't for injuries, Laviska Shenault would be a really, really good fit there because, you've got lightning to Thomas's thunder. You can line him up everywhere. Almost like a better Percy Harvin would be his ceiling.
Sure.
But, and I mean, you've got Denzel Mims from Baylor as well, who, he can fly. He runs a much more complete route tree than Baylor showed. So there are some really good picks there, but I think that wide receiver is such a value. I think that, there are some other linebacker hungry teams late in the first. I know the Ravens are looking at linebacker. I know a few other teams are as well. And so I think linebacker is harder to wait on than receiver, whereas there's a bunch of guys that could be there in the second round that I really like at receiver. Claypool's one of them. You've got Pittman from USC, who's an absolute weapon. So,
I would love to see the Saints and the creative mind of Sean Payton get Jalen Reagor in that.
Rager's one I forgot as well.
That would be electric.
Rager's someone that I think needs the right system to get the most out of him. He could easily be misused, but a Sean Payton offense is one of those offenses where, maybe you do take the plunge at 24. So, yeah, there's plenty of options there. But I mean, you make a good point. I think if they don't go linebacker, wide receivers, the next logical fit.
And speaking of the Saints, it's worth mentioning someone I follow on Twitter, Nelson Souza. I believe his handle is @thefranchise12. He's one of the best high stakes fantasy football players in the world, and as such, he has quite a few connections through the NFL world. He's always searching for information to help him get edges and that sort of stuff. When, as you would imagine, when it's your full-time job. And he did put out a tweet yesterday, I think it was, maybe the day before, that the Saints would be listening to trade offers for Alvin Kamara.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
Way.
I am such a fan of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
What?
wow, that is awesome.
I-
Yeah, I'm good for that.
Extract him, sell
No.
flip him for maximum value.
That's the thing.
Someone will trade a first round pick for Alvin Kamara. They spend a third. They can do a lot with that. And I like Kamara, but there's been durability issues. He's very good in the passing game, but
I mean, Drew Brees has just come back for one last shot. If they tried to trade Kamara, Drew Brees would say not happening.
Yeah, I couldn't see
Drew
them
Brees
while
would be-
Drew Brees still playing.
unless what they decided
Surely.
to do is to say, okay, we're going to go and we're going to get you a receiver, we're going to get you another tight end.
Okay,
we're gonna
yeah,
do
if
some-
that's the case,
that's the
if they're going to
theory.
substitute him for another weapon, then
exactly.
I can get on board with that.
It would have to
Or
be
they can use that first round pick to get Swift. Like
Oh
it's
my
a perfect
God.
circle.
Why,
that you can,
why are
An
we ripping on
upgrade.
Swift? There's Taylor.
An upgrade.
there's Taylor as well, who could very well go into the first to a dumb team. But yeah, like there's not many. I don't like this tight end class, so it would have to be an established tight end, and grabbing a really high ranked wide receiver. But yeah, you make a good point with Breeze. Breeze would absolutely veto losing one of his best weapons unless he got another weapon in return for that.
Mm.
All right, so we are up to pick 25. We're on the home stretch. Lewis.
Yeah, so I'm with the Vikings here at pick 25, and they absolutely need another receiver. So very happy to see them get Jefferson earlier on. Aren't many holes in this team, to be honest. This is a good roster. They've got quarterback, receiver, they got offensive line, they got a running game, they got pieces on defense, they got a pass rush. What they're sorely lacking is a cornerback. They've released Xavier Rhodes, whose career just fell off a cliff. He went from being one of the shutdown corners
to be good again
in the league. Yeah, but I hope so. But they've lost him, and so they need another cornerback. And so I'm gonna draft AJ Terrell from Clemson.
Oh, hey, that's a great pick. I completely forgot about him.
I actually did too, but that is a very good pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, a guy that had an unbelievable career. Got smoked in the Natty in the championship game, but had a very good career.
Yeah, and that's yeah. I mean, anyone can, on a bad day get smoked by Chase and so,
you make
it
a really
happens.
pick
But
here.
I'm not going to put too much weight in one game versus an entire body of work where he's been an excellent cornerback consistently.
It's interesting. So you said that they don't have many picks, many holes on their team, especially after getting a receiver. Cornerback is probably one of the few they have. I'd be interested in knowing though, considering that, like I said, they still have Herbert on the board. Love, for a lot of these guys has a huge ceiling. With all the concerns that almost everyone seems to have with Cousins, could you see them, especially since they spent the first pick on getting a need, taking a bit of a risk with the second and getting themselves a quarterback to provide a bit more competition to Cousins?
They just signed Cousin on an extension.
I was going to say,
I didn't realize that either.
People have concerns for Kirk Cousins. I'll tell you one franchise who doesn't is the Minnesota Vikings. Because they gave him 80 plus million guaranteed for his first 3 years, and he's just signed a 2-year $66 million extension, which is fully guaranteed.
That's incredible. God. I don't know what sort of Stockholm syndrome is evident in that Vikings front office, but for them to fall in love with him after one consistent season.
And didn't he?
Yeah, I do like Kirk Cousins. I think he gets a lot of shit because people weight things like primetime games on Monday Night Football, and a lot of those games he played on a terrible Washington team as well. So those kind of things don't matter to me at all. And Kirk Cousins was undeniably one of the best quarterbacks in football last year, and he's earned that extension.
And do you know who loves him? Kyle Shanahan. If Kyle Shanahan loves you, you're all right.
God bless Shanahan. All right.
Yeah, nice.
All right.
So it looks like it's DeAndre Swift time. We're back at the
we're back at pick 26. That's your last chance for DeAndre Swift. And there's J.K. Dobbins, there's Taylor as well. I mean, you've got all the running backs available.
And all the running backs are ready to go.
Can I trade for
Johnny
Manziel?
Oh, mate, I'd do it in a heartbeat. So, I've got 26 overall to the Miami Dolphins, who are using their third pick of this first round. So they got their franchise quarterback there earlier on. Then they got the linebacker, which I gave them. Now I'm giving them their third pick and my second pick for them. And you know me, you know who I love to draft. I'm taking an offensive tackle again here.
You've got
Ben,
Stockholm syndrome.
No, I think I'm taking Austin Jackson out of USC, who is an absolute heartfelt story in the draft there with he's the tackle that donated his bone marrow to his sister in the off season there, so had a bit of a down year potentially because of this. Still played well, that's for sure. Comes from a good bloodline. He's got a dad that played. I'm not sure if played in the NFL or played at USC as well, but you've just got your franchise quarterback, you hope, earlier on in the draft, and with the medical issues he has, you're going to want to invest some capital in keeping him upright and healthy, and try and get that tackle for the next potentially 10 years there. So there's all the talent in the world from Austin Jackson, and it just makes too much sense to try and get your tackle at the same time you're getting your quarterback here.
I like Austin Jackson.
I think it's a good pick. I think when you look at their other picks in the draft, they've gotten a quarterback, they've gotten a linebacker. They need something on offensive line after losing Tunsil in that trade. And theoretically, I think this is actually the pick they got from Houston, is it not?
Yeah,
Isn't
good
that a bit
call,
of
actually.
Yeah,
Good call, actually.
using the same pick.
In real life, maybe a bit of a trade back situation. You are going a bit early, but at the same time, can you ever go too early protecting your fragile quarterback?
Yeah, and I think a little bit of me thought they might look at a receiver here, but they are pretty. They're decent enough a receiver where offensive line is still a greater issue for them right now.
Yeah,
they can hit a receiver again and let it in the draft, but I think either they would trade back right now, or this is a good pick.
Devontae Parker just had a career year, and what was the kid's
That's
name
what I'm trying to remember. The guy that was
Preston Williams.
He was killing it before he got hurt.
Well, the reason why he went undrafted had nothing to do with talent, and it was all off the field concerns. But scouts had him as like a second round, even late first round talent. It was just his teams didn't want to risk it at all because he's had such a checkered past off the field.
Yeah, little plug to Brett Barry there on that one. He was well aware of that guy before I was.
Brett technically lost the bet though because of that he didn't get injury protection.
Moving to the next pick or the next comment. Sorry,
I was going to say the last thing as well. If you're the Dolphins and you see Herbert still there at your third pick, would you be like secretly internally filthy that you could have taken a top 5 guy on the board and still gotten what a lot of experts say is a good quarterback?
Because someone's trading up to get Herbert if he starts. That's the thing, right? It's not in a world with trades. This doesn't happen.
No,
so
he's not going to fall this far. Like even if he goes past New England, he goes past like LA Chargers, someone will trade up to get him.
So the other thing as well is that we've sort of let Tua drop so far in all of our boards because of his injury. I think we forget just how much better a quarterback Tua is compared to Herbert. There was no question.
Whoa, am I the only one here that is a fan of Justin Herbert?
No, well, it's you and Dave Getzelman, because check this out. According to Charles Robinson, the Yahoo NFL senior writer there, the New York Giants have Justin Herbert ahead of Joe Burrow and Tua in this year's class. They also felt he could have been the number 1 overall pick in last year's class, ahead of Daniel Jones, who they had ranked ahead of Kyler Murray and others. The Giants have Herbert as the best prospect in the past 2 years. And imagine if the Giants jettison Daniel Jones and get the chance
that would be hilarious.
To take Herbert.
And the Giants have been spending. So you know how they can spend 3 hours on the phone to each prospect? Yeah. They've spent the 3 hours with Justin Herbert.
They have.
They
legitimately have.
Yeah.
But you and I were convinced it was a smokescreen, Beau, but I hadn't heard that nugget that Lewis just shared. So now I'm not so sure.
Fascinating. Jeez.
Oh, God.
Well, I mean, look, that's just one NFL GM we know we're smarter than. That's the only way I can
Boys,
see it.
I think
collectively we can do this.
I think just give us the Jacksonville Jaguars, or hell, give us the Giants. We'll do it.
Turn them into the Canberra Giants.
Canberra Giants, Jesus. Best home field advantage in football. All right, so we have Caleb on the clock, pick 27.
With Seahawks, cool. Yes, it's cool getting to this back part of the draft because a lot of these teams, obviously, well, other ones have traded for these picks. They typically have much better rosters. So the Seahawks, like a few of these other teams here, they can pick more on best player available rather than on need. They do have a few needs. Sooner or later, they're going to have to address their cornerback situation again, just so they can get their pure number one. I know they're getting better than they were when they first lost Sherman, but still not great. But look, with Terrell gone, he probably would be who I'd look for here. They have some other, like they could go O-line. I could see that. If any team is going to draft a running back in the first round, it's Seahawks as well. So don't rule that one out. But the dude that I really want to go with here is, I reckon, one of the most interesting dudes in this draft, and that's Laviska Shenault Jr. from Colorado, the wide receiver. He's a very interesting guy, and I've been doing quite a lot of reading on this guy. There's two consistent issues, and I want to get them out of the way before I'm talking about all his pros. The biggest one that we all know is his injury concerns. He had a toe injury, he had a torn labrum that he played through as well. Missed a few games this year. Part of that, I think, is because he was force-fed the ball so much at Colorado. There was a period of 3 or 4 games where he had 73% of touches or something across the 3 games, something ludicrous like that.
Yeah.
The other issue they say with him is his route running ability, but I've also seen videos of him stopping on a dime for incredible comeback routes. So I think that his cons aren't as bad, especially when you compare them to his pros. We talk about the contested catch rates before, with everyone being so good. He had a contested catch rate of 63%. That's better than Jerry Jeudy. That's better than Mims, and that's better than T. Higgins. He's fantastic when it comes to contesting the catch. He forced 44 missed tackles over the last 2 years, more than any other player in college football. I think the Seahawks grab him, and they use him how they wanted to use Percy Harvin when they first got him. We saw the potential of what Seahawks did when they first got Percy Harvin, both in the offense and the return game. They're going to get a guy who ironically has injury issues too, just thankfully no concussion issues. But then they're going to get a guy who a lot of scouts are saying he could have been a first-round running back if he really put his mind to it as well. This is a super talented guy, amazing after the catch. If it's not for CeeDee Lamb, he is the best yard after the catch runner in the entire draft. And I think he's one of these guys that, in a couple of years' time, everyone will be talking about why he wasn't one of those top 3 receivers we talked about.
Yeah.
Or also a bust.
Look,
he's huge risk, huge reward.
I love this pick, and he's really good at forcing missed tackles when he's forced even more than Delpit missed. So it's,
that's the line of the video.
That was good.
But yeah, it's the athleticism. He's just so fun to watch. He is the absolute highlight reel of this year's draft class, and he is thick as well. He's a big boy, 6'1", 227. He's got really strong BMI and moves like a guy who's much smaller than him as well, which is just remarkable. The way he makes dudes miss. He has wiggle of like a 5'10", 180 guy. He just happens to be 6'1" and 227. It's remarkable.
Yeah, he's by far the most polarizing receiver in the draft. I agree with all those upside points, Caleb. He's someone that I was looking at quite heavily for other wide receiver needy teams like the Ravens and for the 49ers. But yeah, the injury concern is one of the big risks. You've touched upon that. The other is, are Seattle creative enough with their offensive play calling to really get the most out of Shenault? Because
No.
That's a straight answer. Very good point.
That's my biggest concern. Not the player and not the fit even, because Seattle need a wideout opposite Tyler Lockett, and I know you hate him, but he's still going to be starting DK Metcalf. Yeah, so they need a wideout. He's versatile with all hell, but Pete Carroll just doesn't run the most creative offenses. So
Mm.
that's my fear is that as a fan of football, that is going to be underutilized there.
It's a good point.
Yeah, that is a concern. You'd hope that if they're going to draft a guy like Chenault, and they do, that it would signal intention to get creative and use him and force Schottenheimer's hand to get creative. Although he does love nothing more than running the ball on first and 10. So, perhaps with a hybrid running back receiver, Chenault would get some carries as well, which would be nice to see. But yeah, he could definitely be a weapon, and particularly with the primary targets being Lockett and Metcalf, he's going to be open and be able to be used a lot. And who better to throw him the ball than Russell Wilson? And you can imagine some of the option plays they might be able to run with Russ and Chenault, who's also played Wildcat quarterback as well. Like if they get creative, it could be amazing. And that it's unfortunate he didn't fall one more spot down to the Ravens, because I think him with Lamar Jackson would just be awesome, and the creativity that Greg Roman would employ. So it's a shame he hasn't fallen there. I'd love to see that, but really can't complain with the Seahawks getting him.
And yeah, here's one of the strong considerations I was going to have for my next pick. So I'm pick 28 on the clock for the Ravens. Chenault was someone I was looking at, as I mentioned, but Ravens have one of the more complete rosters in football at the moment, but they've got a few glaring needs. So wide receiver is one of them. The Ravens had the least wide receiver yards in football last year, I believe. Linebacker is one of them. We did a really good job last year of cobbling together guys off the street to play linebacker. That did a pretty good job. But that we signed guys who are like in their 30s to play linebacker. So that's not the future. And as of about a month ago, interior offensive line is now a need, because one of the greatest interior offensive linemen of his generation in Marshall Yonder has retired. So that's left a big Yonder-sized hole to keep Lamar Jackson upright on passing snaps. So
you completely forgot the fact that you guys need a quarterback as well. You can't keep playing this running back and quarterback.
All right, settle down there, Jacoby Brissett. So I'm really, really tempted to draft Cesar Ruiz here. I think he's the best interior offensive lineman in the class. But I think Lloyd Cushenberry is almost as good, and I know we're not going more than one round, but the Ravens have picked 55, and there's a very good shot that they get a Cushenberry there. So it's an opportunity costing. So that rules Ruiz out. So for me, I'm tossing up between three guys. So I'm tossing up between so Kenneth Murray was an option, but I can't deal with another low IQ linebacker. I mean, not low IQ, a linebacker that misdiagnoses plays. It'd give me too much anxiety if I was coaching the Ravens. So I'm going receiver here. I want to take advantage of the deepest receiver class in quite some time. And the two standout options here are Denzel Mims of Baylor and T. Higgins of Clemson. I think I prefer Denzel Mims, to be honest. I know that Caleb is a huge T. Higgins fan, because T. Higgins has a catch radius larger than the state of Texas. The thing is, and yes, I know you're going to say I told you so when I say this, but look, Lamar Jackson improved a lot as a quarterback between his first and second year as a starter. But look, he still has room to improve as a quarterback, and he could still throw into tighter windows. And you got Hollywood Brown, who's a burner, but then we've got Willie Snead, who's not so fast. You've got blanking right now.
From Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame wideout. Miles Boykin. Miles
Boykin.
Yeah, you've got Miles Boykin, who runs fast on paper, but doesn't seem to get separation like his track speed would show. And then you've got a bunch of tight ends. And so I think to suit the Lamar Jackson offense, you need, like, while he's still getting more accurate as a downfield passer, you need a guy who's better at getting separation rather than a contested catch guy. And Denzel Mims is that guy. I mean, he runs in the high 4.3s. He did have strong production as a pro. The two things that stand out to me was his elite Senior Bowl performance and his off-the-charts measurables. So, I mean, I think he had the best three-cone time of any receiver in the class. At the Senior Bowl, he showed he could run a much more complete route tree than whatever limited playbook they gave him at Baylor. And I've been watching I'm emotionally invested in this pick being a Ravens fan. I've watched so much Mims tape from his workouts, and he's a much, much, much better route runner than his college tape would give would let you think. And the one other thing that concerns me about Higgins, I know this isn't fair because I know there's rumours he was playing with an injury, but he got locked down in not just one game, but his two college football playoff games. And that, look, he's had a productive career, but that still gives me a little bit of cause for concern with Higgins.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting pick. Like, so I think it's fair to pick between those two. It's not that I hate Mims per se. I'm just, like you said, a fan of Higgins. But Mims is an interesting guy. There's so many good receivers in this draft. He's probably the hardest one to get a gauge on because, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think he had something like he had the highest inaccurate passes thrown his way, like percentage among receivers.
Yep.
But he had like the fourth highest catch rate or something stupid. Like he just, which is perfect because he's going to have Lamar Jackson throwing the ball. He's not a very accurate quarterback. Sorry, it was too easy, that one. No, look, I think he's a great guy for you. I think he's exactly what you need. You need a big body receiver. And, I mean, there's a lot of comparisons between this guy and Randy Moss. So I think, it's a really good addition, and it hits exactly what the Ravens need right now.
No.
Cool. We are on to pick 29. So, Lewis, this is your last pick of the draft.
Last pick.
My final pick is for the Tennessee Titans, who, as we know, went deep into the playoffs.
Overachieved.
Yeah.
Yes.
They handled the Baltimore Ravens.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Just
Easily.
which is why the Ravens are picking before the Titans.
Yes. Get on
Right.
with it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Just so we're
Makes
all on the
sense.
same page. Just so we're on the same page. Look, the Titans have had a big loss this off season, and really an underrated guy who hasn't been known in sort of mainstream football fans because it's a small market team and the position he plays. But Jarrell Casey is a huge loss for the Titans.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to do and replace Jarrell Casey, going to get Ross Blacklock out of TCU. Get a big interior guy to replace Casey because the other than cornerback, I think that team is looking pretty good. Offensive line is strong. I know they lost Conklin, but still overall it's a strong team. I'm not sure I would have paid Tannehill all that money.
No.
That's a very polite way to say it.
That's right. That's the English side coming out of him.
It's more of a 2-year deal rather than the 4, so they can't get out of it. It has turned badly, but I do like what they're doing there in Tennessee, and I think Blacklock fits team need, and he's a highly rated prospect.
Sorry, keep going.
No, that's pretty much it.
What defensive front do they run? Sorry, because they took who's the kid they took
4-3.
last
I
year?
think they run 4-3.
That had the torn ACL. What they took?
Yeah, they took.
Where was he from? What's his name?
Mississippi? Was it Mississippi State?
Mississippi State. Yeah.
Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah,
Jeffrey Simmons.
He's the one that was in the
projected
news.
top 5 guy. Yeah. So that gives them 2 beasts up front there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally forgot about Simmons. So, yeah.
And I think getting a replacement for Casey, who, look, as a Colts fan, we had to play Casey twice a year. He was in games against us. He was the guy I was worried about the most. He was so consistent. He was so good at blowing up plays, and he would blow them up at the worst moment for us to have them blown up. So huge loss. I like Blacklock there. I can't remember who said before about Dolphins kicking themselves. I think it was you, Lucas, saying Dolphins kicking themselves for seeing Herbert fall. Talk about people kicking themselves. How much do you reckon the Titans kicking themselves if they see Justin Herbert is here and they just paid Tannehill all that money. Because I'm not a fan of Herbert, but I don't think that Tannehill is much better than him.
I prefer Herbert to Tannehill any day.
Especially at his salary.
100%.
Controlled rookie contract.
Yeah, you get the 5th-year option if you get him at the end of the first round. So the opportunity cost is low.
But yeah, no, I like the pick. I think it's a good one. Hits need, but Blacklock's one of those fringe first rounders, so I can see it happening too.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. No disagreements here.
Yeah.
All right. What have I got?
Tennessee, another team with not many holes to fill. If their offense fires how it fired last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Hence why they're picking at 30 or 20.
Thanks, Booger. All right. All right. So you're on the clock, Beau.
So yeah, that's me on the clock. I'm 30 to the Green Bay Packers. And quite an interesting pick here. I think you probably got to give Aaron Rodgers some weapons here. At the moment, you're penciled in to have Funchess as your guy outside of Devontae Adams. And we kind of unproven what he can do after spending all of last year on injured reserve. But there's a quarterback here who's been sliding, isn't there? And do we know about Green Bay having quarterback sliding?
No way.
So, absolutely. In this issue, Justin Herbert, we're taking Justin Herbert out of Oregon.
Oh my God.
A little fun fact, Aaron Rodgers right now is older than Brett Favre was when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. So they will keep the wheel.
Fact.
They will keep the wheel churning. You get a big arm.
Arguably worse.
And you get a big armed guy in a cold city, can sling the ball through. The weather shouldn't affect him too much. Yes, there is so much bad tape of Justin Herbert, so you're relying a lot on his measurables and what he can do more than what he has done. But you get to sit in behind the greatest quarterback to ever play. Gets that a weapon, that big arm.
Wow,
Lewis
he's going to casually drop that in the conversation.
Look at Lewis's face.
Sorry, I didn't realize Tampa Bay was picking 30th. I'm very confused by the whole situation.
You sit Justin Herbert behind the GOAT for a couple years, get that big cannon of an arm ready to go, and it is an easy transition post Rodgers.
I thought you were having a laugh when you first said quarterback, but the more I think about it, it makes a lot of sense. For a team that's looking to draft for the future, they have the problem with it sounds like Aaron Rodgers that he's become such a diva over the last 4 or 5 years.
He will chuck a tantrum
for him.
He will chuck a tantrum.
Yeah. And look, they have a new coach or a second-year coach there now who he's an offensive-minded coach. It makes a lot of sense for them to get it. I would think that they'd be very tempted, as you said, with all the receivers left. But you make a very good argument for Justin Herbert here.
And you don't think he can get a weapon in the second round? Absolutely.
That's
You're getting someone a
the
difference maker in the second round. You're looking for the future, and you get to sit Herbert there behind Rodgers. Rodgers will cry. He won't like it. It'll cause a bit of controversy, but guess what? Rodgers was in the exact same shoes when he was a kid.
And you know what? The more I think about it, there's probably no better landing spot because based on his tape, I don't think Herbert's ready to be a day one starter.
No,
but he probably has a higher ceiling than Burrows and Tua, even if it's not as likely that he'll reach it, just based off that arm talent. Like he was coming into his class years ago, Herbert was going to be the number one pick when he came out of high school. They're like, this guy's going to be a number one draft pick. He's not lived up to that in Oregon. So, sitting him behind, Beau says the GOAT. Most people would say one of the greatest. Even though Rodgers will chuck a tantrum for multiple reasons, it's not as bad. I mean, it's shocking, but it's not a bad move, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's no ability to trade out here, get another quarterback needed your team, or the quarterback is falling, it makes perfect sense to do so. And let's be honest. Absolutely, undeniably one of the best to ever do it. But the last 2 or 3 seasons have been distinctly average for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Maybe this will light a fire underneath him and get him going and for the next 2 seasons before they decide to move on. Because what is he, 36 now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it looks like
he's going to be looking for one more contract, one more big contract. I don't think the Packers will give it to him.
No, I don't either.
No.
Not when they got Justin Herbert sitting there ready to go, right?
Exactly.
Oh, mate, I wonder what
There we
sports
go.
bet are paying on Herbert to the Packers. That would be really long odds.
I tried to find it, couldn't find it.
I bet
Couldn't find
you
it.
did. All right, so we're down to the final two picks. Caleb Smith, your last pick.
Yeah, last pick. All right. I'm picking for the 49ers. Obviously, like I said before, when Lewis drafted for them, they've already made it to the Super Bowl. They have a very good roster. They've got their offensive lineman of the future. And it's funny because, they didn't get what they wanted from Emmanuel Sanders out of him, I don't think, at least not to the full potential. But, it's worked out perfectly for them because they're in a draft where there's so many good receivers. I know there's a lot of different options they can go with here, picking the best player available. But I do believe they look at receiver. And not only that, but they look at the certain type of receiver. They don't need another fast yard after the catch guy. They already have that in their books now. They need a big body catching receiver. And, as you said before, I'm a huge fan of T. Higgins, and I'm going to select T. Higgins to the 49ers here. There's a lot of pros about him. Look, I want to address the main thing, like you said before, about him. His last two games, in the college football playoffs, where he really didn't perform in either one of those games, and a lot of it's being accredited to injuries, and disregard that. Nonetheless, he didn't perform. The rest of his college career, though, was absolutely incredible. He was, over the last two seasons, the second highest graded receiver by Pro Football Focus. Absolutely amazing. Averaged more than 10 broken tackles a game. The stat that I found the most interesting...
What? 10 broken tackles?
No, sorry. 10 tackles a season. Not
Okay.
no.
I could just see that man.
Just casually dropped
What
that
have I
conversation.
missed?
I thought it was
What
like
have I
Hingle.
missed
I was thinking
Yeah.
Hingle McCringleberry.
That's right. It's Adrian Peterson reincarnate. No, the thing that I thought really interesting on him was that on routes that are 10 plus yards down the field, he actually averages more separation than Judy or Lamb, which I thought was really interesting. So as a guy that's a big body receiver, I didn't think he would be able to cause much separation, but he's really good at doing it down the field. We already know. Great deep threat, he is a red zone nightmare. His catch rate
he's like
is
6'5"
ridiculous.
or something.
6'4", 215. He ran a 4.54, but so did a lot of these other big body receivers in the NFL.
So he's basically Mike Evans.
Yeah,
and look, he's Mike Williams without the neck injury coming in.
Yeah,
that's what he is. Same school. That's my comp for him. It's the same type of guy, big body, high points the football, deep down the field. And just doesn't have injury concerns like Mike Williams had coming out.
No, until those final two games, I didn't have any injury concerns.
And Mike Williams, was 7th off in his class or something?
Yeah.
Pick 107 to the Chargers. Yeah.
Jeez.
And look, the other thing that doesn't get talked about nearly as much about T. Higgins is he has one of the best flips in college football commitments in history. He originally committed to Tennessee. He decided to flip on them, and he had Bleacher Report produce his commitment to Clemson that was filled with fireworks and everything. If you haven't seen it, you need to see this video. I absolutely love T. Higgins. I'm surprised. He's one of these guys, once again, where so many of the wide receiver draft classes, he could be the number one receiver in that class. It's just that this year, there are so many incredible receivers. There's a chance he falls out of the first round, but the 49ers in my mock, or this now mock here, they pick him up at 31.
Like it. I really like it.
I think he's a great fit there. Like you mentioned, unlike other wide receiver needy teams like the Ravens, the Seahawks, they've got Seahawks have some speedsters, but San Francisco are loaded with speedsters. They need that big body guy who can just come down with the ball and can catch anything within a 15-foot radius. His tape don't lie and his numbers don't lie. So I know a lot of 49ers fans
hips don't lie either.
His hips don't lie. They don't lie more than Shakira's anyway in the halftime show of the Super Bowl last year. But yeah, I think he's a great fit there. And I know a lot of 49ers fans' dream scenario is getting, either Kinlaw or an offensive tackle at 13 and Higgins at 31 or a wide receiver. So kudos to us. We've made 49ers dreams come true.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You're welcome.
You're welcome, Niners fans.
You're welcome, Niners fans. All right, so last pick. I am picking for the Super Bowl
Mystery irrelevant of the first round.
I'm picking for the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. An absolutely stacked roster.
Yeah.
which have a surprisingly good defense last year. Look, they've got no offensive holes aside from. I mean, I guess you can argue running back, but this is a well-run organization, so they are not taking DeAndre Swift here.
And also playoff
Jonathan
Damian
Taylor.
to show what he can do.
Put your house on Jonathan Taylor here.
Jonathan
This is what's happening.
Jonathan
Yeah,
Taylor is definitely on the board. However, that is where he shall remain. There are two guys I'd be picking between for the Chiefs now. Jalen Johnson from Utah and Jeff Gladney. Is he TCU? I'm trying to remember. He's from one of those Texas. TCU.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're pretty neck and neck, and I've seen them really, really close in a lot of mocks. The thing is, okay, I'm going to go with Jalen Johnson. Let me just lock that in, and then I'm going to explain why.
Are you sure you don't want to go Lamar Jackson? The cornerback Lamar Jackson?
Or the cornerback AJ Green.
Yeah, how weird, huh?
Well, let's just go completely rogue because I've got Mr. Irrelevant. I see how it is. Where is he on the board?
Who are you looking for?
He's deep down. Jalen Johnson, the corner from Utah.
I will have to actually use the search function to find him. Unless I missed him. No, I missed him. He's 28. He was higher. I'd scrolled down further. That's why I missed him.
So wait, he was higher than Fulton and the Alabama corner?
Yep.
What sort of draft board are you looking at? This
is just one for visual. This is like I'm not relying. It's a TDN rankings. I'm not relying on it for football analysis. I've got my big brain for that. Anyway, we're not questioning it here. This is my ship. I'm the captain now. Anyway, so yeah, the reason I'm going Jeff Johnson over Gladney is so he's got a really high ceiling as lockdown corner, elite quickness, fluid hips. I mean, they both do. He's more of a gambler. So, but the thing is, Jalen Johnson's a much, much, much better player of the ball. He's a ball hawk. He also played all of last season with, I think, was it a torn labrum? He had an injury that he played through last year. He's still got more picks than Gladney. Gladney tends to actually lose the ball in the air a lot more. That's his biggest weakness. I'd rather someone in a Steve Spagnuolo like defense. I'd rather someone who's over aggressive and a ball hawk, kind of like what Marcus Peters used to be for them back in the day. I was
just about to say, it's similar to drafting Marcus Peters.
It reminds me a lot. He's my comp. He reminds me a lot of Marcus Peters. I'd rather have a Peters guy who can gamble a bit, but can make plays on the ball and can stay with any cornerback than a guy who loses the ball in the air. So that's my reason.
To be honest, it also makes sense as well because everyone is going to be chucking a ton against Kansas to continually keep up, and you have someone, on the defensive side of the ball who's going to risk it and generate takeaways. They can be a bit more lax because they don't need to hold the opposition team to 25 points. They can give up 20 points a game and comfortably win every single game.
Yeah.
The thing I like about him as well, I mean, he's not going to blow you away athletically, but he's really, really good in terms of preparation. There's a story that came out of him last year when he picked off Jacob Eason, who's obviously a quarterback in this draft. And he came out after the game and he was talking about how he recognized the formation, he anticipated the route tree, and then he just jumped the route and picked off the pass. And to have that skill as a corner going to the NFL is so good, where you already have developed the ability to read defenses and put in that effort. For a guy to get the end of the first round for a Super Bowl winning team, this is a fantastic pickup for them. There's obviously other corners you could argue, but I really like this guy to come in there.
Oh, yeah. Agreement across the board for the last pick.
There we go. To wrap it up.
What a way to wrap up the draft. Yeah. So that concludes our Sideline Spice live mock draft 2020. We will have a graphic up for those who missed the live video on our socials and on our website, which is www.sidelinespice.com. We'll put something on Instagram too. I covered socials. What time is the draft tomorrow, guys?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. I don't know what broadcast to use, but I will definitely be having it in one ear.
Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us who do not own Game Pass,
it's free at the moment.
Oh, I will. After this call, I will own Game Pass. So yeah, thank you guys for contributing. I think, I mean, all roasting aside, I think we did a pretty good job considering. I
We
don't
did
think it's
well.
going to turn out that way because of the trades, but we did what we could with what we had, right?
We'll have to
that was
organise
good.
something for whoever gets the most picks right. So you get one right, and you're probably looking pretty good.
I'm locked in with Joe Burrow. Then I'm all good.
right.
Yeah, you guys who are in the top 3 got lucky there because from 4
With-
onwards it gets dicey.
I got Justin Herbert at 30 as a lock as well. So
Oh
When
man,
I've already got.
when Swift goes number 1 to the Cincinnati Bengals, we're just going to look
Mate,
like
I'm telling you,
absolute fools.
Jonathan Taylor, message me tomorrow when he gets
All right.
drafted to Kansas City.
On a serious note, before I wrap this recording up, do we actually think there is potential for a running back in the first? Because all jokes aside,
No.
I think
wouldn't
too.
Franchise is dumb enough to do it.
Yeah.
I think If it's only, I think there'll be a running back for sure.
Okay, and I mean, as much as we mentioned DeAndre Swift because he's at the top of a lot of boards, I do think Jonathan Taylor's more likely to go in that first round.
Only because I think Kansas City is, you get a running back that doesn't have a lot of miles left because he's been hammered so much. So you get a guy that's kind of a veteran at a position. What is an absolute need in a team that's winning period is over the next 4 or 5 years. Go get a running back, and then get rid of him after that.
And no Dobbins mentions as well.
You can make Dobbins, DeAndre Swift. You can the LSU running back whose name's too hard to pronounce. They're all viable options there, but I think Jonathan Taylor's better.
Yeah, that's
better fit.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. All right, that wraps things up. Hope everyone who's tuned in has had a good night, and if you stayed for the whole 2.5 hours, I feel really sorry for you because we
Yeah,
took a
I'm
lot of
so
crap.
sorry about that.
Congratulations.
Find something else.
So I apologise on all your behalves. You can go join your families in quarantine now. All right,
All right, boys.
Catch you guys later.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Bye.
Peace.